Hello, everyone, and welcome to the RetroStorm Archives. It is a podcast series where we talk all things pop culture, news, history, and more. It has been a while since we last spoke, so I'll keep it short and I'll explain more in another video. I did some rebranding, and the channel is now called RetroStorm Media. This is my podcast series. Every episode is a different topic. So, with that out of the way, let's get to the main event. In this episode of the podcast series, now known as the RetroStorm Archives, we will be talking about the world of literature, reading, and books, that sort of thing from our childhood and even our current lives. I am your host, Marcus Storm, and I am joined by returning co-hosts, Mystic and Alpal. But wait, we have a newcomer, and his name is Kai.
Yo,
Thank you all for joining me today. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good.
Yeah, I'm
good.
doing pretty good.
It's been a long weekend for me, so I'm definitely ready for
Same.
this. So let's just jump right in with the first thing. How did we first really get into literature other than childhood bedtime stories? And I will go first. For me, I only really liked short stories in the EOGs, which, for those of you who don't know, that's the grade school. Like, I think it was only common in elementary school. I can't remember if EOGs were a thing in middle school. They're the end of grade tests, same as like any other test.
Oh,
And of
Yeah, I think
course,
they
like
were. They just
comics.
weren't called that.
Yeah, and of course, comics or certain books I would get at book fairs. I wasn't really into it until Mystic came along and really got me into books and appreciate reading. So that's really how my story started. It wasn't until recently I really, really got into reading, and I really appreciate the art form. What about you, Mystic?
So I've corrupted you.
Yeah, well, corrupt in a good way.
Yeah. So mine is actually pretty sappy. I was pretty much always a reader as a little kid because when I was really young, we don't have any like close by neighbors started school. I'm very quiet and introverted. So even then, like I just didn't have a whole lot of friends. So books were one of the things that I turned to, especially because I watched a lot of PBS Kids, and that has like Reading Rainbow and stuff like that
Between the
on it. Or
Lions.
yeah, that was one of my favorites. At the time, I don't know if they still air either of those shows now, but they did when I was little. Um, and like the school library was just the best place in the world to me because there were all these books and it was quiet, especially like when we got older and the teachers would send us in there unsupervised. That was my favorite thing. And I don't even want to think about how much money I dumped into book fairs as a kid. That was just like
Oh boy.
the best part of any school year was when the book fair came. So that's definitely how, like, the books have just kind of been a thing for me, but definitely the school library and book fairs encourage that habit for me.
Right. But I really do miss the book fairs.
I know, and like libraries don't make any money, like they're publicly funded. It has never made sense to me why just straight up public libraries don't host book fairs, because it's not like they'd be really taking anything away from the schools that do it. If anything, they'd be doing better because more people can go to them.
Right. What about you, Kai?
Yeah, it was along the same lines. I just like growing up in school. Like as a kid, I just always had a problem with just reading in general. Like it never really interests all that much. Like especially in elementary school, going all the way up to high school. Um, yeah, it was like I think the only books that I really liked were more so like comics,
Right.
like like the Captain Underpants ones.
I don't think I
love
read
those now.
those.
My
Oh, you're
brother
missing out.
I'm now remembering like a sort of picture slash words book that I guess could be seen as a comic slash novel, and I really hated it. It was just so childish to me. But I'll just mention it now since I don't have it on a later topic. It was the Diary of the Wimpy Kid books.
Oh, I'm gonna talk
I
about
I
that
heard
one
of
later,
those.
actually.
Ooh.
I didn't add that to my later topic list, so you guys should bring it all in.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna talk about that when we talk about like books from our childhood, because that was
Right.
actually a good portion of mine.
What about you? What about you, Mystic? Yeah, Alpal.
Well, Kai, were you done with your?
Huh? Oh, yeah, it was, um, yeah, just like during like my childhood, it was just, yeah, like literature just was like something that I wasn't really interested in until like the past few years, like after high school, I really started to delve into like a lot of literature, like mostly in philosophy and theology, that kind of stuff,
Right.
where just as you kind of like live life and you just kind of have the experiences that you have, it's just there's a lot of things and appreciate like until you get older, and that's just kind of how I view literature now. But yeah, that's my thought.
Well, my mom is actually an English teacher at the college level, so I grew up with a lot of books in my house. So I think with me, it was just we had so many books that it just it was introduced very early on for me and my siblings to read books. So it's just always been a huge part of my life. That's just especially because when I was young, I was really obsessed with watching TV, and my mom was so sick of it at one point that she would encourage me to read. And I think that's kind of where it stemmed. It's just I had a lot of books to read and a lot of time actually. So it just kind of fell into place like that.
Yeah, we kind of grew up with a lot of books too, me and my family, and yeah, I just didn't really appreciate it enough until it just got older.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
I remember growing up with a lot of like children's books when I was younger, but not like full on novels or young adult novels or teenage novels.
We
yeah, I
literally
think most
own
parents know, what at what age it's appropriate to introduce like how thick those books should be as kind of like a benchmark. But
Right.
yeah, no, I think I had a little bit more than maybe the average kid my age would have, because um my parents already had like a bunch left over from when my brother was that age, because my brother's 10 years older than me, so we already had, I'm sure, like a lot of Berenstain Bears, Dr. Seuss, the little
Same.
I think they're just called the little golden books.
I think I had a few of those.
yeah.
They were like
Yeah,
the weird little golden print
yeah,
spines.
I think that's what they're called, is just the little golden books. I could be mistaken. But
No,
so
I
we
think that
had
sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we just had like a lot of those, and they were just kind of like always in the house. And like I said, I didn't really have a whole lot else to do. It was either read, watch TV, or play with toys. Sometimes all at once.
Yep, multitasking.
Right. Uh, I guess next will be what is our favorite and least favorite genres. This one's pretty simple for me because I've always stuck to reading one so far in my adult life because it just captivates me more than the others. But I'm trying to open my mind and open my eyes to the others. And for my fave, I'll have to choose sci-fi or fantasy. My least favorite is like the biblical ones or the self-help inspirational ones. It's just not for me. I mean, if it helps people, they do help people. That's awesome. It's just I like a good, fun story. I don't want to feel worse about myself and then feel happy and then sad and then happy and it be a cycle.
Yep.
What about for you, Mystic?
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I'm not into. I believe that section of literature is called like the inspiration books. Like I have a few of what would be considered like self-help books in my collection, but it has to be like a very specific topic. But like biblical fiction, like I come from a Christian household. I'm still just not interested in. I'm really not. Um, but so my taste though is actually kind of all over the place because I read a lot of YA or young adult, and that is kind of a catch-all because there's a lot of subgenres that can go into that. But probably the stuff that I read the most often is YA romance. I have very little interest in actual proper quote unquote adult romance because
Hmm,
I think we all are aware of what 50 Shades of Grey is and those
yes,
paperbacks you can find by the dozens at
that's
Goodwill.
a
I'm not
that's
interested
technically
in that.
extreme romance.
Well,
Hmm,
no, yeah, that's erotica.
yeah,
So definitely not interested in that. But even some that's supposed to just be in the romance category is still a little further than I'm really interested in reading. Um, other than YA romance, I also really like paranormal fiction, which is sort of somewhere between sci-fi and fantasy. It's like that's where you get into like vampires and zombies and stuff like that. And I also like a fair amount of children's books, even well into my adulthood. I just I like it. Maybe it's not as serious as the adult stuff, but like I read for pleasure, and if that's
right.
entertaining me, I don't see a problem with it.
Yeah,
And
like there's
I
children books I would read for fun because they were just so cool. They were so awesome back then.
yeah, like I've got some I'm going to talk about later in more detail that
Yeah,
fit right into that category. Um, I do also read a considerable amount of nonfiction, though, when it relates to art, writing, or psychology, or Disney stuff. But otherwise, I'm not that. Otherwise, that's usually a least favorite for me is nonfiction, especially if it's historical fiction or I also don't like action adventure or westerns or anything like that. And honestly, I'm not usually a traditional sci-fi person either. Like
I found
I'm
it quite
open.
hard to find Western books.
I yeah, but it seemed worth mentioning because I know they're out there. I mean, I'm still open to some of this stuff, but it has to really catch my attention and be based on a topic I'm already interested in for me to um actually pick it up and like try to read it. But in general, that's not really what I'm interested in.
Right. What about you, Kai?
Favorite and least favorite. Yeah, my favorite usually depends on what kind of mood I'm in. Um, if I just want to, just be like stuffy and just want to look into the deeper meaning of things, I really like reading religious texts. I mean, growing up, I grew up in a very strongly devout Christian household, and it was always told that you ought to read the Bible every day, and it meant saving your life, and it's just when something is like applied to you at such a young age, where it's just you ought to do this. It just becomes just really arbitrary and really it's like I don't it's like well I will just because I told that I should and yeah, it's just nowadays I really appreciate a lot of the not to say that like it's like what was written was true or right. It's just I more so see it as, these are things that people saw in those days, and they just did the best that they could to put it into words what they were seeing and feeling. And I really appreciate that sort of literature.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense.
Yeah, and it's not just the Bible, but also other religious texts like from Hinduism, the Upanishads, and uh, certain texts from Buddhism. Uh, it's just very interesting to read for me, and so it's just sometimes I like to read stuff like that, and then when I get so tired of getting stuffy, then I just kind of let go and just read something more lighthearted like science fiction or a good adventure novel. Um, see, I I did want to read Dune because I know you said you were reading that.
Yep, huge fan so far. And I will say the vocabulary it uses is quite unique, so to speak.
Really?
Yeah, it will definitely make you have to use Google a few times. And as for the religious texts, I don't know if it technically counts, like Nordic, Greek, and Roman mythologies. I would definitely read up on that. Those are types of books I would definitely be interested in reading.
Yeah, Greek mythology, like the some family about that, but I guess the Greeks they really took that stuff seriously back then. Those were things that they literally believed to be true, and
Right,
a lot of the characters, the monuments that they would build for these gods, they believed that they actually existed,
right.
and
Yeah,
Well,
that's
even a lot of pagans today still believe in those gods and goddesses, and they still have practices that are to honor them.
Yeah, I think that actually what's so interesting to me about ancient Egyptian mythology, because it's like Norse and Greek mythology where they have multiple deities and they were very elaborate in the things that they did to honor these deities, and it's just that's a whole other can of worms. I'm not even gonna get into, but that's just fascinating to me. And I have actually, if it does count, and I don't think it counts in the religious category if it's something that could be considered a mythology, but I don't know. Um, I do have a fair amount of ancient Egyptian related books in my stash because of that.
Well, I mean, technically, any religious text can be considered mythology.
That's true.
Because it's technically like it's a group of people's belief system.
Yeah. It
Because even in a lot of like mythology classes that like my university has, like sometimes they'll go over like Christian mythology. So it's kind of a loose term, I guess. Because like I said, even a lot of people still believe in like the Norse gods or the Greek gods. So it's kind of hard to say like what's mythology and what's religious when it comes to texts like that.
Yeah, that makes me think of actually like a saying that's like, at what point do you separate grave robbing from archaeology?
Yeah.
Like that, like just recently when like thousands of coffins were found and
Yes, I
opened.
was very excited about that.
Oh yeah, sure, excited.
Well, no, okay. I
Let's open
understand
up
people are concerned about releasing like an ancient Egyptian curse,
just what
but
2020 needs.
for the historical purpose, like the actual discovery and learning about ancient Egypt, that's why I was excited, not the possibility of unleashing a curse.
So
I
you're
would.
saying you don't want a mummy running around wreaking havoc on the world?
I've
No, well,
seen.
that's usually not the concern. The concern is usually like when they opened, sorry, I'm going to tangent for a second. When they opened Tutankhamun's tomb, um a lot of the people that were involved with that ended up dying, and they were like, "Oh, it's the curse." Um so like people are just really nervous about that kind of thing, not really so much the mummies actually coming to life.
I would have felt better if they opened them at least without a giant crowd of people with cameras and stuff. At least do it in a more respectful way.
It was a
I mean, it's
little.
kind of hard to do in a respectful way when you're,
True.
either way, it's.
So, what about you, Alpal? For your favorite and least favorites?
Okay. So lately I've really been into mystery genres, like Agatha Christie. She's become one of my favorite writers, just because I'm not really. I mean, I am into thriller too. Like, I think the mystery aspect of Agatha Christie, and then like Stephen King novels, they're kind of thrillery, but they also have quite a bit of mystery in them. I really like that. I also, kind of on topic we were just on, I really like mythology. I have so many mythology books, ranging from like Japanese mythology to African mythology. It's all really interesting to me, and I'll get like caught up with reading that. I also like reading like Hans Christian Andersen stories.
Oh, I forgot.
Like fairy tales. I love fairy tales a lot.
I will
And
have to. I'll have to look him up and refresh my memory on who he is. The
he
name
wrote
is
The Little
familiar.
Mermaid.
Yeah,
Oh,
and like the Snow Queen and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I love some Hans Christian Andersen and some Brothers Grimm.
I actually have a Hans Christian Andersen book with me right now in my dorm. I bring it with me like everywhere I go. I love it so much. But when it comes to my least favorite genre, I don't really like romance. I like novels with a good romantic story. But when it comes to like novels that are just romance, sometimes I feel like a lot of them are too unrealistic for me.
That's fair.
And that's why I like fantasy novels with a good romantic subplot in it. It's like, okay, this feels a little more realistic. And I'm also not really into the whole like dystopian genre that they've kind of been doing a lot lately. Like Divergent,
Hunger Games.
Hunger Games. I really like the Hunger Games. It just seems like everything after that is, I don't know, it's just old, and they all kind of have the same storyline.
Yeah, I have to agree. I'm not a big dystopian fiction person either.
So I really do like to stay kind of around the thriller or mystery, and of course fairy tales. But I also really like historic fiction. Like, growing up, I read a lot of the American Girl doll books, and a lot of those were very historic, and they talked about a lot of things that happened in their time periods.
I'm sorry. Did you say American Girl books?
Yeah, American Girl doll books. Like the dolls that they had. Each of them came with books that went along with them, and each of them were from different time periods. And I'm a huge history nerd. My minor's actually in history, and so I like historic fiction that is accurate. I get kind of nitpicky though if something's not. I mean, it doesn't have to be like 100% accurate, but when you get like big details that aren't right, it kind of bothers me. So as much as I like historic fiction, it needs to be done right. And sometimes I feel like writers can get kind of carried away with the story and not make it as accurate as it could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah, sorry, I just went off there. I had so much
it's
to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you definitely delivered.
Yeah.
We're here to discuss. That was a discussion.
Yeah, I have a very large range. And of course, I still like a lot of children books. I think I have some that I'm going to talk about later, but it bothers me when like you're in school and they want you to read up to a certain level, which I understand. It's important to read up to that level. But if I want to read a kid's book that is maybe at like the third grade reading level, I should be able to and not feel bad about it. Because if the story is interesting, that's all that matters to me.
Yeah.
See, I had the opposite problem because I had a really high reading level.
I mean, I did too, but it just bothered me that they kept pushing me like, "Oh, you got to read higher." It's like, no, let me read this.
To a
Let
point
me
where
have
I
fun.
could not read higher
Right.
because I had like a 12th grade reading level in the 5th grade, and it's like they only had one singular book in our elementary school library that was a 12th grade level. It was The Three Musketeers. I
Ooh.
tried to read it. I found it horribly boring.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But no, like,
Oh, go ahead.
oh no, I was just gonna add on. Like, I definitely had a high reading level because I read so much as a kid. But it's just like, in school, like, if I had a book, like a book I brought from home that wasn't a high reading level, my teachers would kind of give me snide comments about it, or my mom would. They're like, "You can read higher than this." Like, I know I can. Just let me enjoy book, Or maybe
Yeah,
that's just
like if
that
you
might
want
just
to
be.
if you want to encourage children to read, let them read what they like. Don't get so caught up in, oh, is it the appropriate reading level? As long as you don't have a 10-year-old trying to read 50 Shades of Grey, don't worry about it.
But I also went to like a private school that was very big on making us go above and beyond any sort of academic level. So I think that's why. But it was really annoying.
It sounds really annoying and counterproductive.
Yeah, it was really weird.
Yeah.
That was sort of the standard that was imposed on me a lot, where it's just you ought to be at this level and you ought to be doing this and this, and it just makes life kind of unbearable. You're constantly under that kind of thumb of just you know be this, be that, and it's like you just have to relax and just enjoy where you're at and enjoy what you're reading. And,
Sincerely.
yeah.
Most definitely. Well, what about favorite and least favorite series or authors? For me, my top three favorite series or authors right now are the Renegades trilogy by Marissa Meyer, Dune by Frank Herbert, the Dune sixtilogy, if that's a thing.
I think that's the right terminology.
And of course, Soul Screamers by Rachel Vincent, which is so freaking hard to find these days because it's so
You can't
old.
see me, but I'm dancing.
And with Tochi Onyebuchi's Beasts Made of Night duology as an honorable mention. For the least favorite, I don't yet have one. Well, except for one, but that'll wait. LOTF is a hint. What about you, Mystic?
Okay, so my favorite series of all time is Soul Screamers by Rachel Vincent. Absolute favorite book series I've ever read. I didn't realize authors were included with this, so I have to ad-lib that part, but definitely my favorite author is John Green, because he has yet to write a book that I didn't enjoy at least a little bit.
Saw that coming.
Yeah. If you know me at all, you saw that coming from a mile away.
Honestly.
So my two other series, Goosebumps by R.L. Stine, and R.L. Stine is also kind of up there as a favorite author for me.
Nice.
The Splintered series by A.G. Howard, which is based on Alice in Wonderland and also paranormal YA, so yay. And I've started a series called Wayward Children by, I'm gonna try to pronounce this correctly, Shannon McGuire. But I've only read the first book, which is called Every Heart a Doorway, so I can't comment on the whole series, but I really enjoyed that book, and I like where the other books look like they're gonna go. For authors, like my other favorite authors are Kathleen Glasgow, and where I had so her and Tommy Wallach, who have both only written 2 books each, but I liked both of them a lot, especially Kathleen Glasgow. She wrote Girl in Pieces and How to Make Friends with the Dark. I love both of those. I cannot decide which one I like better. For least favorite, I don't really have a least favorite series. If you'd asked me this 6 months ago, I would have put the Twilight Saga by Stephanie Meyer here. But I've actually been working through rereading the series on Audible, or not. No, that is completely wrong. I've been rereading it through audio books, not on Audible. I dislike Audible, but that's another can of worms I'm not going to open right now. It's definitely not my favorite. I still disagree with the way the series portrays vampires, but
You don't like
it's
the
also
sparkling.
not. Yeah. But it's also not like hot garbage either. Like there are parts of the book that like I'm like, yeah, that's on par with other stuff that I read, so that's all right.
What team were you on?
Oh, sorry, Team Edward all the way. Like they don't even
Oh, Team
like-
Jacob.
So, if I was in that universe, I would rather be with Jacob. But I do feel like Bella and Edward were better together. So,
Here's the thing is like I say, I've been working through it. They don't really set up Jacob as a character until like halfway through the first book.
yeah, and even then, because I've only read the first one and a little bit of the second one, he seems to not really have much of a character in the first one. I mean, he does, but not like.
And it also kind of weirded me out that when they introduce him, he's like 14 and Bella's 17.
Excuse me, what?
Normally age gaps don't really bother me, but that was kind of weird to me.
I don't remember that. He was supposed to be 14.
I think it's kind of hard if you like watch the movies.
I've never
to be able to tell that. Huh?
I've never watched the movies and I don't intend to.
Yeah, it's not really worth it.
Just stick with the books.
Not even for a laugh.
Like I've seen clips and they don't even look good just in clips, but yeah, I'll go ahead and wrap this up though. For least favorite authors, I try not to judge based on like one bad experience. So like I tried to read the first book in the If I Stay series and I didn't really like that author's writing style, but I don't have them on this list because that was one book. I don't think that's fair. But David Leviathan, I think I'm saying his last name correctly. He wrote a book with John Green called Will Grayson, and I perhaps should have taken the fact that Will Grayson was not my favorite of the John Green books as a sign, because I have tried to read other books by David, and his writing style just doesn't mesh with me. I'm not saying he's a bad writer or he's bad at his job. It just doesn't work for me personally. And my other least favorite, who I have much more contempt for, is Nathaniel Hawthorne, who wrote The Scarlet Letter. But I will save most of that rant for later because I had to read all of that stuff for school.
Right.
But his writing style really does not mesh with me because he has some good ideas, but he takes forever to get to even close to something resembling a point.
I'm not gonna like some of the comments I make in a bit. Not about him,
I'm
but
sure I won't. If other
not about
people like
him.
him, that's fine. I just really do not.
No, it's not. It's about another writer, not him. But I'll get to that.
I think that particular category is my longest one for sure. But what about you, Kai?
Favorite
yeah.
author. Favorite series, favorite author. So as I said, growing up, I wasn't really too much into reading all that much. It was sort of just this like mandatory thing. But there was one book series that I absolutely loved. It was from my 5th grade. It was because of my 5th grade teacher. He actually like read it to us during during a class. It was A Series of Unfortunate Events by Lemony Snicket.
Oh yeah, I remember that series.
Yeah, that was like one of the book series that I was just obsessed with, like as a kid.
I used to have the entire set, but I only got
Yes,
like
you have
5 books in.
yeah, I have the whole set in my closet. I read it. I read all of them through, and it was just such a great book series. Like to me, it was really great. And yeah, it was just like even and it wasn't until later that I actually like saw videos of the author, um, like Lemony Snicket, because in the book, the author, I guess, Mr. Snicket, he was sort of like this self-insert in his books, and he would always sort of be this really mysterious figure
Yeah,
that
I do remember that.
was always in the background, and you didn't really know a whole lot about him. And he would just and there'd even be like pictures of him like at the end of the book, except his face was always covered, or it was always just like a picture of him from the back. And I think it was only till last month that I really saw like a video showcasing the author, and it's just like very underwhelming to say the least. And he just kind of went. I just loved what he had to say just about why he wrote the books, and he said that there's just times where life is just so uh, bewildering, and he just like the reason why he just wrote these books was just I guess he just always had this sense of constantly being bewildered by everything that goes on, and you could really see it like in the books. It's almost like this sense of Kafkaski. I think I told you guys a little bit about it,
Yeah.
about just like the bureaucratic nature of like business and certain aspects of life that just feel just don't make any sense. Like there's even one point in the book where the Baudelaire children, they go off to this private school. I think it was in the fifth book. I forget what the name of it is. I should know what it is, but there's like a point in the book where he forces the children to attend his violin lessons, and his and they're just awful, just awful music that he plays with the violin. He's just the worst at it, but he makes everyone sit down to listen to him play. But at the same at the same time, you have Count Olaf, who who is
Yeah.
always who is chasing after these children in order to get their fortune, get their family inheritance. Um, he wears this, he puts on a disguise, which he always does, and throughout all the books, he always has this disguise, and he just like plants himself in their lives just to make them miserable. And at one point, he poses as like this. I think he's like uh, this Arabic coach. He like wears a turban, and he tells the children like, okay, at night I want you to run around in this circle in the lot for how many hours? I don't know how many hours he makes them run, but it's at the same time as the teacher has the lessons. So, and the teacher knows about it, but he still insists on punishing the kids for not attending the lessons. But at the same time, he punishes the children for not attending the coach lessons. So it's this damned if you do, damned if you don't situation that he poses in the book, which just like growing up, it becomes all too familiar where you're just in situations where it's just you're almost like stuck between a hard place and a rock. And I just appreciate like that, like in the books that he wrote. And and just some good stuff.
Right. It was definitely crazy to read. His character was very kooky.
Yeah, yeah, he was really kooky. That's what made him so great.
What about for you, Al Pal?
Okay, get ready, guys.
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
So I already kind of mentioned earlier that I really like Agatha Christie and Stephen King. I think they're really good for the genres that they do write. You know, if you like kind of creepy, Stephen King does a really good job with creepy. But I also really like Victor Hugo. He is one of my favorite writers. But if you do not like adjectives, don't read his books because it takes him a really long time to explain things and to get to points. But I love his writing so much, especially because at the time that he wrote his books like Les Mis and The Hunchback of Notre Dame, he was really kind of calling the French government out because of how crappy they were to people. So he's probably my favorite older writer. But like I said, his books are very long and it takes him 3 pages to describe something. But it's really good if you like that. But so growing up, my favorite book series was the Warrior Cats book. Those books,
Oh yeah.
I was super obsessed with that for all through middle school and even a little bit into high school. I loved them so much. So, I mean, of course, nowadays I'm not really into it, but as a kid, that really shaped my reading interest.
I definitely remember a bunch of kids being into that book back in school.
You
Yeah,
think
I
I would
was.
have been into them with how much I love cats, but I always heard about them, but I could never figure out where you were actually supposed to start with them
Oh,
because there were
yeah.
so many.
That series
Yeah,
sounds
it's a little
really familiar.
confusing.
I think I heard of them, but I don't think I ever encountered the book.
I've never touched one of them. I don't even know what it's about. I just know it has cats on
Warrior
the
cats.
cover.
What else do you need?
They're cats and they're part of different clans and it's a lot.
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
know
going to get
that
into
much.
it. I'm not going to get into it right now because that's not a good idea. But one of my favorite book series now is the Twisted Tale Disney books. I know I've convinced Mystic to read one of them. But
Yeah,
what they are is pretty much just kind of like what if Disney stories. Like
I remember. I think I remember. It was the first one, the Kingdom Keeper, something like that.
Oh no,
no, that's something completely different.
Okay.
No, this is so I'm trying to think of the exact wording for it's like
It's sort of like they take the original story and they twist it. I know Alpal, I know she's told me that the Peter Pan one, for example, takes place when Wendy's older.
yeah, she's 16. And it's they have a lot of them. It's what if Anna and Elsa never met? What if Sleeping Beauty didn't wake up from her sleep? What if Belle's mom cursed the beast? I've been really into those, and each of them are about different Disney movies. And I actually just figured out probably an hour ago that they're making a Hercules one, and I'm really excited about it.
Ooh.
Because it's about Meg.
Ooh.
So those are really good. And you would think that they'd be for kids, but especially Straight On Till Morning, the Peter Pan one is actually pretty mature.
Yeah,
but
they definitely seem like they're more of a YA target audience to me, at least.
yeah, they are, but they're really good, especially if you like Disney movies, and especially I have the Reflection with me, the Mulan one, and they go into a lot of Chinese mythology with that one. And I think at my current moment in life, those are my favorite book series. And of course, each of them, they don't really connect with each other at all, but they're really interesting. And I think there's 3 different writers for it. But I don't really have a favorite out of all of them. I just kind of read them and I like it. And for my least favorite book, I really don't know. know if I have like a least favorite book series or like a least favorite writer. I feel like I do, but I can't think of who that would be right now.
I can think of one that you're gonna go off on when we get to the school section.
Jane Eyre? I hate Jane Eyre. Probably my least favorite book of all time.
Book. The author is Charlotte Brunt. I never know how to say her last name.
I don't think I dislike the I don't know, because I don't really know her other writings, but I hate the book Jane Eyre so much. I wasn't going to get into that right now.
Yeah,
but I
we'll
hate
get
that
into
book
that later. We'll
with
both
a
go off
burning
on that.
passion. I hate it. But playwrights, I like Ibsen. I don't know if you guys know who Ibsen is. He wrote A Doll's House.
We read that for theater, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, that wasn't too bad.
Yeah, so playwrights, he's probably my favorite. I didn't mean to go on that really long rant about everything.
Oh, sorry.
But
rant.
I think this is a good place for me to stop, because I don't think I'll be able to stop.
I had to really restrain myself for that one because I could just name book series and things for hours.
And there's too many books.
Yes.
I think we're doing good so far, actually.
Right.
I'm pretty restrained.
Oh, just wait.
Yeah,
just wait till you get me going on Jane Eyre. Oh my goodness.
Oh, what are some memorable childhood books or stories? The most memorable books were a series I'd seen in those paper scholastic book order forms. One I wish to find called Beast Quest. It was a really great, really fun series about this kid who would go on these adventures trying to kill all these different beasts. I've never got really far because money. Those things require money. And I really liked it, and I'm trying to find the entire set, which there are some on Amazon for like $36 for the first 6 books, or like, I guess, the first series set. But
yeah,
that is one.
When I was looking that up, it looks like there's just so many books in that series now, so you might want to like just find a list first. And
they're thin. They were thin, small books.
And, like, start there.
Yeah. But they were definitely like thin, small books, like good size ones for a child to read. Yeah. But I also liked the adventurous but quite adventurous and magical. The Magic Treehouse was also one that I think a lot of people loved, and I would like to find those some more.
I was neutral on that series because like we read some of them as like a class, and like I didn't totally love them. I didn't totally hate them. I did. The library had a nonfiction Magic Treehouse companion on ancient Egypt, and I would love to have my own copy of that.
Right. Oh, what about you, Mystic?
Okay, so I'm just going to list the books that were memorable, and then I'm going to talk about the ones that I actually want to talk about, because there's too many books.
Right.
So, Goosebumps, Harry Potter, The Spiderwick Chronicles, Katie Kazoo Switcheroo. I think that's what that series was called. My Sister the Vampire. This isn't a series. This is just one book. Annie on My Mind, which I want to mention but not really talk about. Dork Diaries, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Sahara Special, Wings, or it's also been retitled Fairy Wings by E.D. Baker, and Hocus Pocus, which is not the Disney movie. This was a different book written by one of the guys that worked on like the special effects for Harry Potter, and that was a very interesting book. But so Goosebumps was just a large part of my childhood in general. Those were some of the first like junior chapter books. I was trying to remember what I said, that I ever read, because the school library had a fair amount of those. They didn't have like every single one, but they had a pretty good selection, and I was always disappointed when I would go in and they wouldn't have one that I hadn't already read. And at one point, I, being the smart, intelligent person I was, dared check out, I think it was Say Cheese and Die, but it was in Spanish because it was the only one they had that I hadn't read. And I thought maybe I could muddle through. Spoiler alert, I could not. But yeah, so Goosebumps was a large part of my childhood, and it's still a series that I enjoy to this day, even if it's, you know, kind of cheesy, but it's still a good time. I feel like I don't need to say a whole lot about Harry Potter because everybody's read Harry Potter or knows about Harry Potter at this point.
I only know about it from the movies.
Yeah.
I know of it and was never allowed to read it.
You guys need to do that.
It's on my list.
It really is worth it.
Yeah, just a spoiler alert that for Order of the Phoenix, the first like 3 chapters are kind of a slog to get through, but after that it picks up. But that's like the 5th book, so you'll have a while before you even get there.
I also want to read the Fantastic Beasts books.
So they actually don't have like proper books. The 2 books that have been released are like the screenplay.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah, My Sister the Vampire I was actually surprised. I wanted to reread it, and I was looking online to see if there were any books that I missed because I had like 5 or 6 of them. This series goes on way longer than I thought. It has, I think, like 20 or 30 books now, and I was just like,
God.
when did this happen? How? But I really like that series, and I first got into it because it actually came with like a little bat necklace in one of those Scholastic book orders. And I still have that necklace, by the way, in my jewelry stash. But like that was a good time though, because you have the covered in pink preppy girl and the goth vampire girl, and they're sisters. They're twin sisters, and it's just a really good time.
Do you guys remember that series? It's like each book was different, but it was like the creature from the Black Lagoon or something, or so. It was like about all these monsters or whatever. They would pose as like adults or whatever in a school or something.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. I think
I'm looking this up.
The insert name here from the Black Lagoon.
Something from the Black Lagoon.
Yeah, something like that. We only ever like read those for class. I never like read those on my own.
Yeah, that's what it was from the Black Lagoon books.
Yeah.
Like the teacher from the Black Lagoon.
But so, Dork Diaries and Diary of a Wimpy Kid. I got into Diary of a Wimpy Kid first because everyone was reading it, and it got to a point where I forget what it was called, but the cover of it was purple. When that book came out in that series, I got it from a Scholastic book order, and like the day it got there, they gave them to us in the morning at school, and I finished it by that afternoon before school let out because that's how into it I was. But Dork Diaries, I actually like Dork Diaries better because everybody says, oh, it's Diary of a Wimpy Kid, but a girl. No, like it's still written in a diary format in the same way, but like Nikki, her life is completely different from Greg's, and she has a completely like different disposition on life and everything. But it is really good. But that series, it's still going. I think Diary of a Wimpy Kid's still going too. Like they just got too long. I just couldn't keep up anymore.
There's 13 books, a 13 Diary of a Wimpy Kid book set on Target.
Yeah, and I think there's at least that many Dork Diaries books now, possibly more like 14 now. I don't remember. And then the last two actually that I want to talk about are Sahara Special and Wings. So Wings was probably the first like fantasy book I read, and it's about a girl who like she finds out that she's a fairy from another world, which should be obvious why that's right up my alley.
Yes.
And I won't say too much more about that because it's been a while since I read it and I don't want to spoil anything that I do remember. But Sahara Special was one of the first chapter books I ever read. And the funny thing is, I read it because me and some of my elementary school friends thought that Sahara was another way to spell Sarah. And that's why I read it. And it was only later that I find out how that word is actually pronounced. But like the front of the book looks like an old beat up green notebook. And I actually have my own copy now, and I've reread it as an adult. And the main point of the story is this girl who's in special education, but she also loves reading. Um, and like, it's just, it's a really good book. And one of my favorite lines in it is something about how like when they go shopping for books, this girl, like they're not like a super well off family, but when she picks out a stack of books at the bookstore, her mom hands over the money as if they were bread or something they really needed. And that has rung true for me like basically my whole life. And that might be my favorite children's book of all time right there. Maybe. There's a lot of competition there. But yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to mention. I'll stop talking now.
That definitely explains your email.
Yeah, that really should explain that, shouldn't it?
Kai,
Yes.
what about for you, the most memorable books from your childhood?
I mean, like I said, with series of unfortunate events, that was definitely a biggie in my childhood, going from like elementary through middle school. There were a lot, and and like in high school, uh, I started to read some more complicated, or not, more like I guess adult oriented books, like Catcher. Yeah, there's Catcher in the Rye, and there was the other one. It was to To Kill a Mockingbird.
Oh yeah,
Oh, I
that
love To
was a
Kill a
good one.
Mockingbird so much.
Yeah, I think that was one of the that was like one of the like that was one of those books where it like kind of gave me like an aha moment of reading this story and really coming to see like what was developing in the story, and some of the that were like present throughout the whole book. As the teacher like explained throughout the story about like foreshadowing, and certain things having meaning in different events, like there's like a part in the book about Atticus. it, he sees like a rabid dog and goes to shoot it, and then eventually in the story it has uh, a bigger something else similar happens in the book, where it's sort of similar in nature, where he has to make a decision that will impact somebody's life. And it was like one of those stories that really like stuck with me, is like just what the themes of what was going on at the time.
Right.
Also, yeah, also the Crucible was another one that was
Yes. Good
that was
choice.
also, that was also another real serious story of what was written in that book, and when it was written. At the time, it was written back in the 50s, when you had the witch hunts that were going on with trying to find the commies that were going on in America, and the story itself talking about the actual witch hunts that happened in, what was it, the 1800s.
I believe so.
And yeah, those were definitely some stories that definitely like left an impact with me, that it it slowly started to make make me uh kind of whet my appetite for oh, I'd really like to start reading stuff a little bit more. But those were definitely two some of the stories that I that I read.
Right. Crucible was a good one, and I did love To Kill a Mockingbird, and I actually did like the movie when we watched it in class.
Yeah, that was the other thing too. I'll talk about it more when we get to the book and TV film adaptations.
Right.
Because in my high school, we had this film and media academy. That's At least that's what we called it, and a lot of our uh, curriculum, we were more focused on film studies. And so, like, for our English class, when we were reading literature or reading books, if there was a film adaptation for it, we would watch it. But yeah, it was like one of those aha moments where you read the book and then you watch the movie, and then they say, like, well, okay, which one was better? But I'll shut up about that until we get to that, because
Yeah.
I actually did have a lot of opinions about To Kill a Mockingbird and the film adaptation.
Right. So, Alpal, what about you for the most memorable books?
Okay. I know I kind of mentioned earlier about the American Girl doll books I read. Those are like one of the first books I read growing up, and they kind of stuck with me for a while, especially because of how historically accurate, not like super. I mean, the time period that they were in were accurate, and so I really like probably some of my favorite to read. And like I said earlier, I read a lot of the Warrior Cats books. That was actually probably the first series I was like super, super into. So it kind of paved the way for my binge reading. So I would say that that book series kind of it has a special place in my heart. What else?
I
I mean, I
kind
read a
of.
lot as a kid. Like, of course, there's Harry Potter. I read that as well. A lot of fairy tales. Of course, I read like the tamer versions of fairy tales as a kid
Right.
because 5-year-old me did not need to read some of that. But I was also really into like Nancy Drew and stuff, like the
Nancy
really
Drew.
old Nancy Drew
That
books.
sounds familiar.
I think I remember those.
Yeah,
Nancy
she
Drew's like a
Wasn't
pretty
she like a
famous
mystery solver or something?
yeah,
Yeah.
she's a detective. And the
Oh,
books first came out, oh goodness, like
It's like
a
the
long
80s,
time
wasn't
ago.
it?
I'm actually gonna look this up.
Yeah, I think it was like the
'Cause
80s. I could be
it's
mistaken.
Yeah, was that like kind of the same time as the Hardy Boys, or?
Yes, it was. She was like the girl answer to the Hardy Boys, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
I'm trying.
that was one of those book series that I just, especially the Hardy Boys. I think I remember trying to read the Hardy Boys and I couldn't get into it.
A
Oh,
Nancy Drew video game for the not video game, a computer game that I could never
well,
get
we
to
had all
work.
the computer games. Actually,
I
no, the
had
first. Oh, go ahead.
no, I had the one, and I just could never get it to work, and I was
What did
disappointed.
you have? Do you remember?
I somewhere, but I don't remember. I think it had something to do with a boat, or like the Seven Seas or something
Oh,
like that.
Ransom of the Seven Ships.
That
I have all of
sounds
them.
right.
So actually, no, I looked it up. The first Nancy Drew series came out in the 1930s.
Oh, okay.
wow.
So
That's a long time.
a good 90
There's
years ago.
even a Nancy Drew movie. Well,
There's so
two.
much. She every like few years they'll have something new for her, but she's very popular. But I read a lot of her books growing up because we had all of them. So I think those were kind of like the biggest books from my childhood that have kind of shaped my reading interest. But of course, when I got older, I would read a lot of other stuff. I actually read To Kill a Mockingbird, and that's probably in my top 5 favorite books. It's really good. I'm not going to go on that rant though, because it's a lot.
A lot of books can have a very long rant.
It's not even so much as a rant, just like
There's just so much to talk about.
Like a good rant.
Yeah.
If it's a rant but positive, then it's a rave, I think. I could be
Ooh.
mistaken.
Wow.
But that actually, I forgot to talk more about Annie on my mind when I did mine, so I'll just say that really quickly. That was actually like a scandalous book in our school library of sorts, because like the main plot is 2 girls falling in love, and like I read it solely for the scandal factor, and like it was pretty interesting actually, and that's another one of like the books from my childhood that I have a copy of now as an adult, and I intend to reread it. I just recently got that one, so I haven't reread it yet, but I'm fully intending on doing that just to see, like, I want to see what it looks like as an adult compared to as a kid, because I remember there was some stuff in it that, yeah, it kind of deserved that scandalous label in an elementary school.
Ooh.
That's saucy.
So, what about our opinions on poetry? For me, I love reading poetry, especially like when some poems are included in the end of year tests or end of semester tests. It's just calming, almost meditative, except for the test part, obviously. It's like a short story in a song form, a rhythmic tale, if you will. It can be really fun to write in all the different poem types. I'm even starting to get into mini magnetic poetry, which is like you make poems out of these little magnetic words or letters.
Which would also be my fault.
Yes. But it really is fun. It really is calming and fun. I think an undervalued creative writing form.
I have to agree with that. So my scalding hot take on poetry is, when you're in school completely over dissecting it, it's bad. Any other time, good, yes. Because like that, honestly, that's my problem with pretty much all literature in school, regardless of what it is they dissect it to death. But that's just, we're not there yet. We're not there yet. I'm not gonna get on that soapbox just yet. I think really suffers from that, because I know I really did not appreciate poetry anytime we read it in school. It wasn't until I started uncovering like poetry on my own outside of school, and I wasn't forced to dissect it, like, oh, does this use of the word flowers signify that the sky is blue and the person is sad? And I'm like, it's sort of like with comedy. Like, if you explain the joke, it's not funny anymore.
Right.
That's kind of what it's like with poetry. It's like, you can admire that it might mean something deep and very moving, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you just needed a word that rhymed there, depending on what you're writing.
That's very true.
Yeah, and like the other thing they don't teach you in school is poetry doesn't have to rhyme. Like, free verse poetry is a thing where you have no rhyme at all, and you just write and put feelings on a page.
Absolutely.
So, and yeah, like, and that's like why the mini magnets are so important to me, because I learned about those through Fridge Poet Project on DeviantArt, and her poems, like, as far as I can tell, most of the time she doesn't follow any particular rhyme scheme or anything, and she managed to capture these really interesting emotions and really interesting visuals. But I would never want to dissect that in a classroom as part of a lesson, because it would destroy it. So those are my thoughts on poetry. in a school setting and being over dissected, I hate it. Any other time, love it. Awesome.
What about you, Kai? How do you feel about poetry?
I absolutely love poetry. I always thought it was fun, like as a kid and growing up. Like yeah, there's like times where sometimes I like to like dissect it and look into it more, but then other times it's a fun way. It's fun and good way to express yourself, and I think it's just it's very very nice. In fact, even with Mystic, I was able, I saw that her pictures for the mini magnets that she was doing, and that's uh, and it kind of reminded me of like these like word magnets that somebody had on their fridge, and I would just like spend a lot of time just making these little phrases that I thought were really funny, and that's just the whole point of poetry. It's just
Right.
just putting words together to make a nice piece of art.
Poetry is definitely, in my opinion, one of the best ways to creatively express emotions.
Yeah,
Yeah, yes, because it's sort of like writing in the abstract. So like you think of writing as usually like developing a plot and a story and all that.
Right.
But poetry, you don't have to do that. You can just put words on the page and see where it takes you. So it's very creatively freeing in that way.
What about for you, Alpal?
I can respect poetry, but I personally don't like it.
Ooh.
My heart.
Yeah, I know. I read it. I respect the creativity with it. It's just not my cup of tea. I
That
don't
does
think
make sense.
all poetry is bad. There are some poems I really enjoy, but I've never gone out of my way to read poetry. And unless one is like super recommended to me, I probably won't. And as someone who does write, I never write poetry just because it just doesn't, I don't know. Like I said, I can respect the creativity from it. I don't know. It's not very, it's just not my cup of tea, you know?
Right.
Like that's fine. Like it's definitely not everyone's cup of tea. Kind of like how like abstract art isn't everyone's cup of tea. I think
Sure.
that's a good like way to put it because like I said, poetry is kind of writing but in the abstract.
Everyone has their favorite style, I guess, if you
Yeah.
will.
And like I don't dislike all poetry. It's just like I said, I don't normally go out of my way to read it. Most of the poetry I have read has been for school. And
That might be your problem.
no, I wouldn't even say that is my problem because I don't know. Because I've kind of been surrounded by it for a long time because I think I mentioned earlier my mom's an English teacher. So it's like it's been in my environment for a really long time. I've just never really been able to connect with it like I have with other forms of writing.
Might be overexposure then, like you've been too exposed to it and it's just lost all meaning.
That sounds probable.
All right, that's it. We're all going to the nearest poetry slam.
No, okay, I have never been, and I'm not really interested in that. I prefer
poetry slam.
It's when you like go, like in fiction, they always portray it as like, oh, a person reads a poem
It's kind of
fairly
like
poorly,
going
and then
to
everybody snaps.
Yeah, it's kind of like going to a bar or a certain like building, kind of like a comedy place, and you go on to the stage, you read your poetry, and if it's good, I guess people snap.
Yeah, I've never actually been to one, but like I say,
remember
I'm
that
not
from,
really.
I was gonna say I remember that from Extreme Goofy movie.
Yeah,
Yeah, there you
yeah, it's like
go.
that.
Yeah, and they all start like snapping their fingers.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not interested because one, I can't snap, and two, I prefer leaving it open to interpretation, like of how my brain reads. I like that. I like it being open to interpretation in that sense. And also, no offense, but some people just cannot read poetry. Like I remember in school when we would do like out loud reading and they'd have people read poetry out loud. Some people just can't read it.
I
Like
hate out loud reading in school.
I have mixed feelings on it because on the one hand, it's nice for like somebody else to read it, but at the same time, if you ever get that one person that stumbles over every single word, that is just a nightmare. Like I'm not trying to like shame those people because I mean, some people are just better suited to reading out loud than
I had
others.
one of those people in middle school. I didn't shame them. I just felt really bad for them.
Yeah, that's my thing. Is like, why do the teachers always seem to pick the people that have trouble reading out loud? Like, pick the people that you know can actually read and like get through it because you're just making it harder on the person that's having a hard time reading, and you're making it harder on everybody that has to listen to them.
Yeah, I know I have a lot of trouble with stumbling over my words when I'm reading, which is weird because I'm normally not. Actually, no, I'm pretty bad at talking to people. Never mind.
Yeah.
I can usually do pretty okay reading like a book out loud. My problem is just if I try to go too fast, and then I'll start tripping over words.
Yeah, then everything slurs together.
Right.
Yeah.
It's different for like when I read through like plays though. I don't know, maybe it's just because my head isn't like in a reading mindset, it's in an acting mindset, but like when I do just like the first read through for theater, I don't normally ever go over my words. But when it comes to like in class, it's like,
I really miss theater class.
Me too.
Me too.
me too.
I had
Just
so much
everybody misses
fun
theater.
performing and stuff, dressing up and stuff.
And then you always forget about like the writing vocabulary and the not so fun parts because all the other stuff stood out so much.
Right. Well,
I'm actually taking a theater class next semester, and I have a textbook, and I was like, wait, did we use textbooks in high school theater? I'm like, oh wait, we did.
Yeah,
Like I completely forgot about it.
That would happen to me every semester when I signed up. I'd be like, oh yeah, we're gonna do theater and we're gonna do some acting and stuff, and then I'd get in there and he'd bring out the vocabulary words in the textbooks. And I'm like, that's right, that's a thing that we do too, isn't it? I forgot about that.
Oh, I think my least favorite books are textbooks. Can I go back and change my answer from earlier?
Sure, why not?
Yeah, my least favorite books.
I can't
Actually, wait,
even
no, that's a lie. There's a lot of textbooks I really do like.
Yeah, see, like I have some psychology textbooks that I read for leisure because that's just a topic that interests me. But okay, no, I know what my least favorite book is. You know what my least favorite book is? Math textbooks.
Yes.
Burn them all.
I feel that.
Well, is that all we have poetry for poetry? Because the next topic is a big one. It's the big one.
Yeah, it's the one we've been waiting for.
Let's buckle in. Our thoughts on high school reads. I was fine with most high school reads. For the class reads, I mean, the Epic of Odysseus, the Crucible. But there is the one I hate, Lord of the Flies, with a burning passion for many reasons I'll simplify for the sake of time.
I don't
First of
understand
all-
why people don't like it. I'm
First of
sorry, I
all,
didn't mean to interrupt you. I just
the
Well,
pacing
you can sing its praises in a minute.
yes,
okay.
the pacing of things was kind of slow. It seemed slow. The story was ridiculous. The fact that an airplane crashes and all these boys survived with 0 injuries and none of the adults survived. Hashtag plot convenience. The idea that children born and raised and civilized in a war era city area, and the fact that they would become so broken down and savage seemed very unrealistic, especially that quickly.
It's actually
Yes, I
not.
know it was symbolism. It might have been symbolism for society without authoritative figures or a set system, and how chaotic it would be without it. But using kids on a deserted island seems weird to prove that point or to make that point clear. Also, the pighead that they talked to was very lame and didn't make sense. And the fact that these kids were gone for so long without a massive search party, that just didn't make sense to me. It didn't sit right with me. That's all I have to say for sake of time. And that's the only book that I didn't care about.
So actually, they did do a study where they put a bunch of boys around that age in a house to see what would happen. They actually did turn on each other very quickly.
Yeah, I think I saw something similar to that. It was John Tron.
I've heard of him, and I think I tried to watch one of his videos, and he started swearing and making a lot of toilet humor jokes in the first like 2 minutes, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, never mind then.
No,
Yeah.
he like brought up like this TV series back from the 90s. It was about like these they put him all on a school bus and took him out to like to this ghost town and basically had them like survive on their own with limited to no adult supervision. And it was sort of like this like reality series that they did, and it was just like an absolute hot mess of
You
what the
know,
heck.
I think you just hit on like the main reason I didn't like it, because I did not like Lord of the Flies either. I I won't say it was entirely plot convenience, but it bothered me that they crash land and these and all the adults, doesn't matter how many adults were on that plane, all of them died, every single one,
Yeah.
and nothing but kids were left. That seemed like a major, like, that bothered me personally, but okay, fine. Sometimes we have to, but I think Kai just hit on why I really didn't like it. And it's too similar to like reality TV for me, like Survivor or whatever, where like you
Yeah.
put a bunch of people on an island and then you watch them go crazy. I'm just not into that. Like, and it was just boring to me. Like, I don't care about these kids that crash landed on a deserted island and had to survive on their own. I really don't. I could not possibly care less. And okay, make a statement about society and power systems and all that, but please do it in a way that I actually care about the characters, because the writer, he couldn't make me personally care about them.
Right, that makes sense.
And I'm still like, this isn't really a flaw against the book personally, but like, it still baffles me that the title is like The Lord of the Flies, because when I first heard that title years and years ago, before I ever read it, I thought it was about like some nerd who, and like he got that nickname because he was like at the lunch table with a bunch of flies at it, and so they called him the Lord of the Flies or something. And it would be like a story about this nerd overcoming, well, being a nerd. Like, you know how those stories usually go. And honestly, I probably would have found that more interesting. And now Al Pal's gonna go off on me.
No, it's fine. I know not everyone enjoys it. I liked it because I like the meanings. I like the characters. Yeah. I thought it was interesting, especially compared to everything else we read in that class. I don't know. Out of everything I read in high school, that's probably in my top 3, but also we didn't really read a lot of fun stuff in high school. So
Yeah, I've only seen Cliff Note.
Cliff Notes, I don't think I've ever used Cliff Notes. I've never even seen them. But Kai, what about you for the your thoughts on high school reads?
never hated a book so much than Jane Eyre.
Oh my god.
At like
What's so bad about Jane Eyre?
however you say her name. She, from that book, I haven't read any of her other work, but from that book, she has the same problem as Nathaniel Hawthorne, where good premise.
Oh, hello. Oh god, it's happening again. Stupid internet. Sorry about this.
Is horribly, horribly flawed and horribly, horribly boring. Because, like, okay, you have this 11th hour twist that I guess I'm not going to spoil for anyone who wants to try and read it. But, so, just
Well, you shouldn't.
I don't think I ever will.
But, well, like, so the plot is actually starting to pick up. You just get this, like, 11th hour reveal regarding some other characters. And the book completely switches and puts the main character in a totally different place where nothing is happening. And we get introduced to these characters we've never heard of before, we care nothing about. And it's like, no, go back. Things were just starting to get interesting. Go back. What are you doing? Like, that's not anticipation. That's just full on stopping the story to go tell a side story that only kind of, sort of, a little bit comes back later. And not in a fun way. Just like, I had to use Cliff Notes to get through Jane Eyre because I could not read that freaking thing.
It was really bad.
And look, here's the thing. So there's actually a modern written book called My Plain Jane, which takes the story of Jane Eyre and actually, like, sort of retcons everything, so it's actually an interesting story. I don't remember who wrote it, but My Plain Jane, I way recommend that over straight up Jane Eyre any day.
Mystic, do you remember when our teacher called me out on not liking Jane Eyre?
I was told about this.
I'm sure I should. I'll let you tell that story if you want to.
No, so like I've said before, my mom's an English teacher, and she actually knew our English teacher senior year because I went to school with her kid. Long story.
Which one was it? Which teacher was it?
Oh, Weber.
Yeah, Weber.
Oh.
I actually went to middle school with her son, but that's not the point. The point is that I was talking to my mom about it, and I was like, this is crap. And I'm normally very forgiving on books. Like, even though I didn't like The Scarlet Letter or Huck Finn, I was still very not okay with reading it. I read it and I was able to get through that. But Jane Eyre, I just couldn't, and I was complaining to my mom about it. And so my mom was talking to the teacher about it, just because I guess they're kind of friends. And then one day in class, our teacher, she's like, your mom told me you didn't like Jane Eyre, in front of everyone, mind you. And this one girl, actually these two, they got so mad at me, like, how could you not like Jane Eyre? This is like the best feminist novel. And it was...
Best feminist... Pardon me while I choke. Oh my gosh.
It was like, I think you might be able to tell who said that, Mystic, but...
I'm thinking of two girls that were in our class, and now that you say it, I think I know which one it was.
Yeah, it was both of them, but like...
That was not a feminist novel at all.
It actually
It was a
is
romance.
considered one of like the very first feminist novels, which is one of the issues I have with it.
Why?
That's an issue I have with it. Everyone talks about how she's this feminist hero, and she's not.
She
Like at
used to be a
all.
teacher.
I can find like maybe 4 other older novel characters who are more in the lines of feminism.
Ask me. The Scarlet Letter was more feminist than Jane Eyre.
Because well, I'm not going to get into the Scarlet Letter right now, but
Well, like the whole premise. Well, we're in the right section for it. Like the whole premise of the Scarlet Letter is you have this woman living alone in colonial times, and like she has to wear the Scarlet Letter around town because she adulterated, and now she has a daughter, even though her husband's not there. Like that's just on premise alone. That's a way more feminist
Yeah.
premise than Jane Eyre, where you have this girl who like, oh, she has a miserable life and she goes to a terrible school and she goes on to be a teacher for some rich guy who she falls in love with.
yeah. But at least like with the Scarlet Letter, you know, Hester really did. She didn't own it, but she did kind of try to use that to empower her a bit. I don't know. I didn't really like the Scarlet Letter. My mom actually wrote her thesis on the Scarlet Letters. I know much more about that novel than I'd ever like to. But go on.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I don't like the Scarlet Letter. I really truly do not, but I like it better than Jane Eyre, and that's saying something for
Yeah.
me.
I don't think out of everything we read in high school, I really think Jane Eyre has been my least favorite.
It was definitely my least favorite. And we also read, so like my sophomore year, same teacher, we read this book called The Kite Runner, which is not at all what it sounds like either. I'm really tired of books that do that. But so I can't even give you like the full premise because I tried to like dump most of it out of my head. But The Kite Runner is about this guy who grew up in Afghanistan with a friend and like had kind of a traumatic experience or something, and like he moved to the United States when he got older, and like he wants to and like it's like a whole metaphor thing where like he's trying to make up for this incident with his friend as a kid with his friend's son now that he's an adult. And like if you like wartime story type stuff, because like I said, it takes place in Afghanistan and it's like around the, I don't know if it's like before or after 9/11. I don't remember, but it's like around there. And there's like a whole, like if you like action adventure stuff like that, you'll probably like it. Really did not. I found it horribly boring and uninteresting because that none of that was in any way stuff I was interested in. But I still, if I had to choose, I would choose to read it again over Jane Eyre. Even Huck Finn. I did not like Huckleberry Finn. And I would still
me
choose
neither.
it again over
Yeah,
Jane Eyre.
I didn't really. I don't remember much about Huckleberry Finn either. I remember reading it and.
Well, just I bring this up every time it comes up because it really expanded my view of it when I learned this, that it was actually written originally to be like a weekly story in a publication at the time. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, that helped me a lot because that was one of my problems with it, is why is this so episodic and feels like the story is going nowhere. That made, oh, that's why. Why were we not told this when we were going over this in school? I don't understand.
Well,
And maybe
also,
we were, and like she just glossed over it so fast that it didn't register.
I don't know, but I know because my mom used to teach Huck Finn. A lot of like English professors and even Twain, like they say that Huck Finn, even when it was completed, it was never really done. Like Twain kept working on it.
Yeah, I can
So
see
it,
that.
it had a lot of issues to begin with. So I'm a little, I don't like it, but I'm a little more gentle with it because I know it's still not where it needs to be. And and a lot of like English professors will say that.
I know very little about Huckleberry Finn except from what Mystic has told me about, like, for example, the accent it was written in.
The
And
vernacular.
Dialect, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
I love vernacular.
I mean, it was kind of okay at first, but then you get past like the first 2 chapters and the novelty's worn off by that point. And you're like, okay, look, Mr. Twing, can you write a sentence I can actually read without having to do mental gymnastics? And like, I'm a person that's if I could speak, I'm in support actually a lot of the time of writing characters with the vernacular for the sake of, making things more interesting. But when literally the entire book is written that way, it just gets old, and I'm like, okay, please give me a sentence written in proper English. Just one, please.
A lot of the times, like, if I'd read a sentence and I couldn't know what they were saying, I had to like read it out loud. And I'm like, oh, okay, I know what they're saying now.
Yeah, or like
it's
you
not
have
hard
to
to read.
like you have to think in a very thick Southern accent.
And that's something I do not have.
Yeah, like I have a little bit of one, especially if I've been around my family a lot recently. You can really start to hear it. But I don't have one that thick. Like that is like deep South, stereotypical cowboy levels of accent in that book. A lot.
Right.
Which since we're here and I don't think I went over it. I had to read The Crucible for English, and I mean, it was okay. I didn't hate it. I also didn't love it either. I just I didn't really like what it was going for. Like I understand what it was going for, but I don't really like it, especially because like the witch trials are kind of misrepresented in fiction a lot. Like
Yes.
for example, so the witch trials in the 1800s,
No
there
one
were
was actually ever burned.
Yeah, no witches were actually burned at those witch trials.
They were hung. Well,
yeah,
some of them were.
and one was crushed to death by stone.
And that was a man who chose to ignore the trials.
Well, I'm not sure. I'd have to look it up to be sure. I'm not sure if that's actually how it went down realistically, like if that's the
Either that or he had like information about it, but he refused to say anything.
Yeah, that was like the story in The Crucible. I just, like I say, I don't know if that was the historically accurate version of what happened, but we do know there was one that was crushed to death by stone, regardless of why.
Right.
The actual witch burnings were in the original witch trials, which were in Europe, and I think I might have the date wrong, but I think 1300s or something like that.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, and I also don't like so that's my problem with pretty much every book I've ever read in school, other than Divergent, is that they try to dissect everything to death. Divergent, we didn't actually do that, but that was a middle school book. I'm not going to get into that. But, although that was weird, because we also read Flowers for Algernon in middle school in the same class.
You did?
Yeah, and we dissected that to death. I'll talk about that in a minute, but let me make my point here. That's my problem, though, with a lot of really anything we ever read in school, is English teachers love to take a book and then dissect it until it's not fun anymore. I don't care what it is. And that's my big problem, is they all make these completely factual statements like, oh, this is exactly what this author meant when they used this symbolism. And it's like, you don't know that. Did you ask the author? No, you didn't. You don't know that. Don't say that. Don't make that a factual statement. You can say, this is one interpretation. Do not say, this is unequivocally what the author meant, because that's just not true. That's a lie. And it's not fair to the author.
Yeah, I don't like that.
That really irritates me. Like, okay, Weber, same teacher. I will never let this go as long as I live.
I knew you were going to bring this up. I knew it.
Yes. You knew this was coming.
Oh boy.
While we were reading Jane Eyre, one of the other kids in class asked her, So authors do all this symbolism stuff intentionally, and
Right.
she said, quote, yes, authors do everything intentionally.
Wow.
I wanted to
Yes.
get up and
Wrong.
scream. Like, I was like, no, how can you possibly say that?
Oh, she was fuming. Mystic was, oh my gosh, I remember that. Like, I remember that so
True.
vividly.
It's not true. Like, I wrote her an email about it and everything. Like, that's not true. Yes, authors may put a fair amount of symbolism in their stories. Some do, some don't. It's a personal taste thing. But to say unequivocally, authors do everything intentionally, that is a bold-faced lie. That is not true, and anybody that has ever written any work of fiction will tell you that.
You would have hated to be around the people I grew up with. Let me tell you.
Yeah, I could go on for hours about that because it burns me up so bad. Like, I understand there are different ways to read literature. There's like the normal way we think of it, where it's like the authors their intentions do matter, and then there's also death of the author, where the author's intentions don't matter any more than like anybody who's reading it, and I can respect that. But that's not the same as just saying, oh yeah, they do everything intentionally, because no, they don't. And I will say that 50 more times before this is over, I'm sure, now that I've brought it up. But
This is-
like, that's my problem though with like all the school books, is they take that approach to it, like, oh yes, anything you could possibly read into this, the author definitely did intentionally. No, they didn't. Like, people try to do realistic readings of Alice in Wonderland, like, oh, it's a critique of the monarchy at the time, calling the queen a tyrant. No, it wasn't. Lewis Carroll made it up for these little girls that were like family friends one afternoon on like a picnic lunch. It's not that deep.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, and I could see how people would like interpret those stories and take them like really seriously.
Yeah, that's definitely a common thing that happens.
The
All
whole
too
point of
common.
Alice in Wonderland is it's nonsense writing. Like, it's not supposed to make sense. It's not supposed to be deep and serious. Just leave it alone.
In high school, did you guys ever read Cyrano?
It does not sound familiar to me.
Yeah, it doesn't
Cyrano de
sound familiar to
Bergerac?
me either.
No, it is one of the best things I read in high school.
How is
I'm
it
trying to think.
spelled?
I'm trying to think what the movie's called. That is so Cyrano is this guy, and he likes Roxanne, but he has this really like big nose and it makes him unattractive. And so like Cyrano likes Roxanne, but he's unattractive, and Roxanne likes Christian, who's very attractive. But Christian is really bad with his words. So Cyrano writes letters to Roxanne and says that they're from Christian, and it's so good. It's so good. It's so good. You guys should read it. There's a movie that's
What?
based on it, and it is so good. It
I
is.
think Between the Lions might have done a spoof of that, because now that you've described it, that premise sounds familiar to me. Say
I
his
mean-
name
It does
again.
sound familiar.
Cyrano de Bergerac.
Can you spell it?
Cyrano. I think Cyrano.
Sounds like a fun story.
I cannot spell his last name. Don't ask me to. But no, it's
Wait. I'm googling. Go ahead.
but no, it was really fun. We read it in language class. If you guys had Miss Langley in high school, and we would act out because it's a play, and we would act out the parts. It was so good. It's one of my favorite books.
You
to
know
this day.
where I know that from?
Where?
Muppet Babies. The old Muppet Babies, not the new one. The old Muppet Babies. They a Valentine's episode where Gonzo was really looking up to what'd you say his name was? Cyrano.
Cyrano?
Yes, I hear that. My tongue does not want to say that for some reason. I think the movie's called Roxanne from what I'm seeing, or at least the version they use in Muppet Babies for the. Yeah, okay, so I am familiar with that. I thought that sounded kind of familiar. Now I know why. Which is funny, because in that episode, Gonzo actually kind of does that thing where he's, like, taking love advice from Cyrano and saying it to Piggy to try and get her to be his Valentine.
Yeah.
Oh,
The original Muppet Babies is really cute, side note.
it is.
But
Muppet Babies.
And now I have the song stuck in my head.
So if you guys ever want to read something, it's not very long either. It's pretty short, but that we read in my class with Langley, we read that and Les Mis, which are two of my favorite books to this day. But yeah, Cyrano's really good. You should all read it. I'm a Cyrano advocate now.
Yeah, like
He was not sponsored.
Reading the plot for it, it definitely looks interesting, and I think I definitely want to check this out.
I'm inclined to check it out now that I've remembered that, like, my first exposure to it was Muppet Babies.
Wait.
Wondered about that, actually, like, where some of the live action stuff they incorporated came from. There's one of them figured out.
Yeah. Well,
before we move on, I think I said I was going to talk about Flowers for Algernon, which was not a high school read, it was a middle school read, but sort of on topic. So, like, Flowers for Algernon, if you don't know, Rugrats actually did a spoof of this, where you have a rat and you have a human, and they perform an experiment on the rat that looks like it's going to fix a problem with the human. in the book's case, so the main character, Charlie, is very... I'm not sure what the politically correct term is anymore, because the word I was going to use people don't seem to like anymore.
The R word.
Yeah. Let's
He's
say Charlie has a
mentally
hard time
slow.
things. Yeah. Charlie has some mental issues learning things. And so they do an experiment on the rat, and, like, it looks like the rat is getting smarter, and, like, so they... And then, like, the whole book is, like, this contrast of, would you rather be smart and not have any friends, or would you rather be stupid and everybody loves you?
Oh, that story sounds really familiar. I think Jimmy Neutron did an episode like that.
Yeah, or see, like I mentioned, Rugrats did a spoof of it, because in Rugrats, I'm gonna completely spoil this episode. Hope nobody wanted.
It seems
I hope
like
everybody's okay with that.
Yeah.
So
Rugrats.
Yeah.
You know how Chucky, like, if you ever watch Rugrats, he has kind of a stuffed up nose all the time?
Yeah.
So in this episode, they perform an experiment on the rat that clears up his stuffy nose. And so they do the same thing to Chucky, and he sounds really weird after they do it. So instead of being his intelligence, it's like his voice. And so his lesson is, like, would you rather have a stuffed up nose and still have all your friends, or would you rather not have a stuffed up... Everybody thinks your voice is weird and they don't like you as much anymore.
That sounds kind of odd.
Yeah, I'm not doing it justice by just describing it, but it was actually kind of interesting.
Didn't they have a movie for it too?
Flowers for Algernon? Yeah, I think so, because I think we watched it. I just didn't really like it, because I think it kind of took... Like, I see what it was going for, but it's one of those books that I think kind of takes the message a little too far, and it's like, well, there is a middle ground here, you know, between being stupid and everybody liking you, and being too smart and nobody likes you because you're too smart. Like, you can be somewhat intelligent and have a few friends as the middle ground.
Yeah, there comes a point where it's like yeah, like for me, like not be a walking dictionary sometimes. just with, like, just kind of with my upbringing, I almost feel like it's like a curse that I have to just kind of get out of. But I understand where some people, they just want to just forget the stuff that they learn and just kind of just get far out, be in the moment. And but yeah, I completely understand that sentiment.
Yeah, and like there's also kind of like a forced romance with his teacher at this school for the adults that have
Peace.
learning disabilities, and I'm like, well, it's really forced though. Like it does not feel natural in any way. And I think the point they were going for is that like she can, which is kind of does not make this teacher look like a good person, because it's like she can love him back and be in a relationship with him when he's at like a middling level of smart, but when he's I'm gonna say I'm not trying to be rude, but he's a fictional character. If it was a real person, I'd be more gentle. But like when he's stupid, like she can't be with him because he's too stupid. But then, he gets too smart, and then he's too smart for her. Like it does not feel good.
Yeah, that's pretty freaking shallow.
I don't think that was the author's intention. I think he was trying to show that like Charlie could be loved by somebody or something under the right circumstances, but I don't think that was the proper way to execute that message.
Yeah, no.
And also I really didn't like it because we were forced to write like summaries of every chapter after we finished them, because it gets to a point where we couldn't read it as a class because it starts getting like a bunch of swear words and spicy thing. Apparently middle schoolers are not allowed to read out loud, which I understand, but also it's like, did you
Then why are
have
you
to
reading the
make
book?
Well, yeah, and it's also like, did you have to make summaries for every chapter? Because that really killed it for me. I understand wanting to make sure we read it, but I feel like there were better ways to do that.
Yeah, definitely.
Like even Divergent, like we read it on our own after a certain point, and we didn't have to write summaries for every chapter in that book. Like, I guess because it was YA, she had just assumed we'd read it anyway.
Yeah.
It was definitely crazy.
I think I'll shut up now about
Yeah.
the school reads, because I've gone on for a while, but it's just this one, that one, and the next one they really get my goat pretty badly.
Yeah. Alpal and Kai, do you have anything else to add to the high school reads?
I think I had my say.
I know I talked about Cyrano. I didn't really talk about Les Mis, but I don't really need to go on a Victor Hugo rant or rave because that'll take a long time. But I did like, actually, this doesn't really count, I don't think. But whenever I was in classes in high school, I would read through the textbooks for other cool stories, and I read a lot of Poe stories. I really like Edgar Allan Poe, and I read a lot
Oh,
of his
yeah.
books
Oh
from
yeah, no, Edgar Allan
the
Poe.
textbooks we were given.
How could I forget about Edgar Allan Poe?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's one of my favorites. I actually read a lot of his stuff in middle school because that was just the type of middle school I went to. It was a private school. That was weird. But I remember when I was in English class my junior year, I would read through our textbooks and find like the little Poe short stories and read those. I know because I wasn't assigned to read them, but I enjoyed those better than a lot of things we did read.
Yeah, me too. Like of anything I ever had to read for school, Edgar Allan Poe stuff was always like the best stuff. I am a little worn out on A Telltale Heart now, just because it's so
Oh, yeah.
overdone.
A Telltale Heart, I kind of
So many
liked.
things do that. Like there's a SpongeBob episode that is a reference to the Telltale Heart. It's just
Yeah,
everywhere.
yes.
I also liked The Pit and the Pendulum and The Cask of Amontillado.
Amontillado was okay. We read that
That
freshman
one,
year, I think.
yeah, that one. I think that's why that one might have been ruined for me and Al Pal, was because we had to read Cask of Amontillado, or however you say it. I cannot pronounce anything today. freshman year, very good English teacher that we had.
Nope.
So, yeah, that one was kind of ruined for both of us. I think if we had just read it on our own or with any other teacher, it would have been fine, though.
Probably. I also really I think my favorite Poe story is The Fall of the House of Usher. If you guys haven't read it, go read it. It is really good. Don't watch the movie, though. The movie is awful.
I think I've read it before, but it's been a long time. I really like there's a cat one that I don't. It might just
The Black Cat.
like, yeah. I thought it was something simple. I did not know that existed for a long time. It was only like a couple years ago that I discovered it, and I read it and like, oh, this is good. I like. I mean, it figures it has a cat in it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But it still really surprised me though. And there was a at around the same time that it wasn't that one. It wasn't A Telltale Heart, but I don't remember what it was called. But it had similar themes, and I also liked it. Remember the name, I will mention it.
Well, guess that brings us to what we think about the book and movie adaptations. I myself have little say, as most movie adaptations I have not even read the book for, except for like Percy Jackson and the Olympians, the first one anyway, Hunger Games and Divergent, and I'm currently reading the Dune books, so I'm looking forward to how this new adaptation movie turns out. The cast looks amazing, the trailer looked great, so I have high hopes, but not too high to where I'm disappointed. But I've heard good things about the director, Denis Villeneuve. I think that's how his name is said.
I wouldn't know. That name is completely unfamiliar to me.
Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah,
So,
sometimes it works, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Well, most of the time they don't.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. So, yeah, I have strong opinions about book to screen adaptations, like not just movies, because some things don't get movies, they get shows or whatever. I'm gonna do rapid fire of the ones I'm familiar with, and then I'll go back and expand like as they come up.
Right.
So, in
Yeah.
general, though, I think they're usually bad.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
The Fault in Our Stars and Paper Towns were bad, but The Fault in Our kind of okay upon a second viewing. Paper Towns is just bad. The Looking for Alaska Hulu series is good. 13 Reasons Why is book to screen
Garbage.
adaptation I have ever encountered in my entire life.
Even worse than Paper Towns?
Yes.
Wow.
Unequivocal. Hands down. Way worse. So much worse.
It's not even, I haven't seen it, but from what I've heard, it kind of morphs the meaning of the book and makes it into something else.
It doesn't even morph it. It doesn't even follow the book. Like, sorry, we tried to get through the first episode on Netflix right after it came out, and I was like 15 minutes in, and I'm like, I can't watch this. This is so bad. And like at that point, it hadn't even deviated that much from the book, but like what it did was so off, and like I've been watching it from afar ever since. Like I don't actually watch it because I refuse to give it the view count on Netflix. But I've been like keeping an eye on it from like reviews and stuff in the background and clips, and I'm just like, this is such garbage. How did this get 4 seasons? And like after the first season, they're not even following the book anymore. Like you could have titled this
They just
anything
completely make up their own thing.
It's just that's the difference between it and the Looking for Alaska series is the Looking for Alaska series. They did 8 episodes, 8 1-hour episodes.
I have that book on my Christmas list.
Oh, yay! I'm very excited to see what you think. I'm usually very hard on book to movie adaptations, as you'll see as I go further down this rapid fire list. But Looking for Alaska got a solid 7 out of 10 for me. And that's one of my favorite books right there. That is a John Green book that I absolutely love. So for me to say that, and I think part of the problem is that movie adaptations usually don't have enough time, but then you have ones like 13 Reasons Why, where they just keep going on and on and on, and there's too much time, and you have to start making stuff up and destroying the characters and the message
Right.
of anything that was in the original book. And I think Looking for Alaska got the balance just right, having just the 8 episodes. As of now, it doesn't look like they're going to get another season, which I hope they don't, even though it was good. I don't want more. It ended well enough. It does not need any more. But yeah, that's my scalding hot take on that. Harry Potter movies are pretty good. Different but good. Pretty Little Liars is actually a book series and a TV
Really?
show, if anybody didn't know that.
I didn't know it was a book series.
Yeah, no. It's again, same thing. It's very different. The books between those words are just not coming out in the correct order. The books are very different from the show, and they go in pretty different directions, but like they're still good, both of them.
All I
And
know
they
about
have,
the
like-
show is there's a girl called A. She was probably bullied, and then she started killing people.
No, that's not that's not what happens at all in the books or the show.
Okay, then I
can
must
see why
be
you
very
would
mistaken.
think that. Right. So the premise of both, even though, like I said, they end up going in different directions with it, is there was this popular girl, Allison, who was the center of a friend group, and she died. But then mysteriously, the group starts getting messages a year later from somebody that keeps messages as A, with secrets and things to blackmail them that only Allison would have known.
Oh my god, that
But
sounds
Allison is
like
supposed to be-
Unfriended. It sounds
no
just
idea
like
what that is.
Unfriended. It's the movie that was basically all Skype call and someone
Yeah, it
who
was a
committed
horror movie.
yeah,
Oh, that sounds awful.
air quotes horror movie.
It's really bad.
Yes, very.
Ugh. Well, so
Like
like the
it's
thing
not,
about
it's barely scary.
that it sounds like depending on when it came out, they might have like been trying to ride Pretty Little Liars' coattails.
Like 2015, I think.
Yep. Definitely riding Pretty Little Liars' coattails then.
It was
But,
it was basically a girl committed suicide because she was bullied so much, and she was like supposed to be the friend, I think, if I remember correctly, of this group of people who were involved in the Skype call. And then all of a sudden they get this mysterious person from the dead girl's account messaging them and joining their call, but obviously not saying anything, and starts messing with them and haunting them and blah blah blah. It was very hard to watch because it was just so stupid.
Yeah.
And they tried so hard to make it look like a poor quality Skype call with the glitching and all that stuff.
gosh. Yeah, I will go out on a limb here and vouch for Pretty Little Liars and say that they did that whole premise a lot better and made it a lot more. I think it's because they weren't trying to make it a horror movie. It was just thriller. So like it's supposed to be suspenseful, but it's not like supposed to like creep you out and make you have nightmares.
Right.
I mean, it can be creepy sometimes, but it's like that wasn't the purpose of it. But so I'll move on now. Fine. That's good. The book and the movie are different from each other, but in this case, I think it's for the better in some cases, and I think they did a really good job with it. I was pretty meh on Divergent and Hunger Games as far as adaptions go. And I'm also not. I didn't see all of them for either one, the movies, so.
And I know the reason why.
Yeah. But like, for me, it's mostly just because the books were also kind of meh for me, so I'm not like invested in how good the adaptations were either.
It's definitely not my favorite dystopian series or movies or books.
I mean, Divergent was okay for me in the book form until the two main characters, Triss and Four, like, by the time you get to halfway through the second book, they're just constantly 1 minute they're all nice and cute and fluffy, and the next minute they're at each other's throats, and it's just so back and forth. Can you guys please pull yourselves together for 5 minutes so we can actually have some plot happen?
That's why I didn't finish the second book. I got so fed up with it. I was like, I'm not reading this.
I finished it, but I was like skimming the second half because I was fed up with it, and I completely just skimmed the third book for all the major plot points. It was just when they were cute and fluffy, I didn't mind it. It's when they were just constantly back and forth, hot and cold like that.
Not every relationship can be perfect.
Well, I know that, but like I think this was unrealistic. Even if it was supposed to be a healthy relationship, I
That's
think
true.
it was unrealistic. Because like
It was a lot.
Yeah, it was a mess, which is unfortunate because they did have some interesting ideas and some like cool visual stuff going on, but that's a can of worms. Diary of a Wimpy Kid movies. Not bad, but also not good either.
I never bothered to watch them.
I watched like the first two. I definitely watched the first one, and I think I watched the second one. I don't remember. It's been a long time. I'm also confused as to why they completely skipped the third book when they were doing the movie titles, because they did Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Project Rules, and then instead of doing the third one that I don't remember what it was called,
Was that the final straw?
I think
No.
so. The last straw, something like that. And then they just completely skipped that title and called the third movie Dog Days, which was the fourth book. I never understood that.
And then they skipped a whole bunch of the other ones for the long haul. But I'm not even going to talk about that.
I wasn't even aware of that.
Yeah, they did the long haul, but no, that's like the 11th book or something. It's yeah. And it was so many years later. I don't know why they did it. No idea
money,
why.
That's why. But yeah, that's why I say like they weren't better adaptation than 13 Reasons Why, but also not a good adaptation either. I mean, I don't know. The first movie was kind of okay, but I think it was just after that is when it kind of started to go downhill. Like they're two pretty separate entities from each other at this point. So then Goosebumps series and movies, it's all kind of mixed as to whether it's good. There's a lot there between the TV series and the two movies, but
the TV series was fun.
Yeah, some of them were really good and some of them weren't. It's just I can't really go like, oh, it was all good or it was all bad. And then the two movies with Jack Black, the second one, but I actually really like the first one, given it's not supposed to be a direct adaptation of any one Goosebumps book. It's kind of an amalgamation, which I think for what it is was the right way to go. And I had my concerns about Jack Black playing R.L. Stein, but you know,
is that who he was supposed to be? Is that who he was supposed to be?
Yeah, Jack Black was supposed to be R.L. Stein.
I never watched the movies. I just saw the series.
Yeah, well, I thought he did a pretty good job. Like I said, I had my concerns, and I was a little confused as to why they cast him instead of R.L. Stein, because R.L. Stein is still living. He's in his 70s, but he is still living. Actually, he looks pretty good considering he's supposed to be 70-something years old, if you ever see pictures of him. But yeah, like, I don't know. It was a good time. And I really liked the movie because they ended up re-releasing one of the Give Yourself Goosebumps books for it because the dog on the cover was in it. And that whole line has not been re-released at all since the 80s. So I really appreciate that. And so the last one that I have to actually really say anything about, Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children.
Oh.
It was a good movie, but it was not a good adaptation.
I agree wholeheartedly with you.
And then the only other things I have to say anything about is I'm specifically avoiding watching the adaptations for Everything, Love, Simon, and To All the Boys I Loved Before, because those are all read and I enjoyed, especially Love, Simon, which is actually called Simon versus the Homo sapiens Agenda. which I think it says a lot that they changed the title. Like, that speaks volumes to me, and not good ones. And then things that I want to see the adaptations of. Be More Chill by Ned Vizzini has a Broadway show, and I want to see that at some point. I want to see Umbrella Academy, which is an adaptation of a comic series by Gerard Way. And then Dear Evan Hansen, which I think started as a Broadway show, but I have a book of it.
I want
And
to
has made me
check that
want
one
to
out
see the
too.
Broadway show.
I also want to check out Rent.
I have mixed thoughts on whether or not I want to check Rent out. And then a total oddball that I have up here. So there's a book called Tommy Wallach called We All Looked Up, which I think would make for a really good movie, because the premise is you follow a bunch of high school as they find out that there's an asteroid that's got like a 2/3 chance of hitting Earth in
2/3.
Yeah. Like it's like they do the odds and it's like a whole thing about the book where they're like, there's a very good chance this is going to hit us, but there's also a chance that it might not. And so you follow these teenagers as the world basically like descends into madness in the weeks leading up to this day where it's either going to hit them or not. And like I said, I think it would make for a really good movie if you were going to make one of Tommy Wallach's books movie. The other one is Thanks for the Trouble, which I really love, but I don't think it would make a very good movie. Or rather, I think if they tried to make it into a movie, it would be a very, very poor adaptation and I would not enjoy it. We All Looked Up, I think I would like.
So Kai,
I'm ready to rant.
Yeah, so Kai, what do you think about the book adaptations, book to movie? Or it could be book to TV, book to like web series or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, so growing up, I was, I loved like watching TV. I was just that traditional, 90s kid that just liked watching cartoons and just didn't have a whole lot of interest in reading or whatever. In fact, I specifically remember there was like school where I was like answering these questions on this worksheet where it said, which form of media do you like to watch, or do you think is better? It's like, is it a book or a movie? And I remember writing down like movie because I'm able to like see the pictures and I can see what's going on versus reading. It's just I'm just reading words and I just don't get to see what's going on, unlike a movie.
Right.
And it was like I think I saw like what a lot of other people around me were writing too, and they were writing books like for some reason, and I didn't really understand why. Like it was just but yeah, anyway, high school, we started getting to go to the, like they call it, the Film and Media Academy, from like sophomore year to senior year. And the first year, on sophomore year, we had film studies. So what we did was we studied film from the 1880 or just around that time period, like some of the first instances of moving pictures that were like used and were presented at like a theater. I think the first one was like a moving train that was like going towards the audience, and then everyone freaked out, and I think there was people. I don't know if it's true or not, but it was like a story of like this train that was going like towards the audience, and freaks out. They all leave the theater. I mean, that's the story at least, but I don't know if that was like defunct or not. But anyway, it was, that's just kind of what we studied. from that time all the way to like the 80s is where we like stopped. And yeah, it was just around that time when they were talking about how certain angles and certain shots had a particular like meaning to it. Like I know Mystic had it say about authors that they do everything intentionally, and it's uh, not so much the case like with authors, but with movies though. Um, yeah, a lot of stuff that they do is like intentional. Like the director can come out and they say that we do these shots a certain way because this and that, and
Oh,
that's just sort of a rule that they follow.
right.
Yeah, like that
And
I won't argue with. Like movies are a completely different medium, so like I
yeah,
don't doubt that they
Oh,
do a
yeah.
lot more things intentionally, but you still have to you do have to still leave room for like there are still going to be things that they just do because I don't know, I thought it was cool or something, but there are definitely more instances where they're doing that kind of thing intentionally in film than in literature, in my humble unprofessional opinion.
Regardless of whether or not it actually works for their product.
Yeah, yes, definitely.
yeah. So anyway, getting to the literature aspect of it, when we were watching movies that were adaptations of books, this was sort of the beginning point for me to like really compare the two different styles of telling a story, and it it helped me appreciate like literature like a little bit more, and to like because there was one instance where I was reading uh it was To Kill a Mockingbird, and I remember reading the whole book through, and I remember like enjoying it and all that. And I remember watching the movie adaptation, the one that was released. I think it was the 50s or the 60s. It was like black and white,
Yeah,
and it was like it was the first time that I like had a moment where I watched the movie, I thought to myself, huh, I actually remember liking the book a lot better than the movie, which a lot of people they like the movie better, but it was at that point I was like no, I like the book better because in the movie they left out certain points of the book, which is a common complaint for a
Yeah.
lot of people who read the book. They watch the movie and they see in the movie there's things that they leave out that are in the book, which can get pretty heated. Like, no, this was like a really important point that happened in the book. Like, why isn't it in the movie? And usually it's either to save time or it didn't fit in with the creative process, because there's just all kinds of negotiations that happen when it comes to like how they
I've
tell the
definitely
story.
I've definitely seen that happen. Movies leave out super important key plot points and stuff.
Yeah, and uh, it was like kind of an aha moment where yeah, depending on how well that they adapt the movie from the book, it's really tricky because it takes. I mean, what does it take? Like 10, like eight to 20 hours to read a book or something like that. Is that
I think it
for me?
depends on the person.
Yeah, for me, it'll take months for me to like read through a book like all the way through because
I'll admit,
I
same
get
as me.
For me, it depends. It depends on the book, like how long is the book, how into it am I, how busy am I in my life at that
like
point.
how much
Because,
time do I have to read this?
Right.
yeah, because sometimes I can read a book in like a week, or if I'm really, really into it, like all those years ago with that Diary of a Wimpy Kid book, yeah, I can get through it in a whole day. Average, it's gonna take me probably about a month to get through it at least. Um, Yeah, that's the end of that sentence. I don't know why it sounded like I was going to continue.
Yeah, but yeah, that was one of the things that I thought was like, what if there was a movie that perfectly represented the book and the story that it told?
I would love to check that out.
Yeah, there's a pin that I see floating around on Pinterest from time to time that's basically somebody in all caps being like, I'm gonna watch a movie that's 8 hours and is an exact replica of my favorite book to the teeniest, tiniest detail, then you are absolutely right. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I want.
Well,
and the thing was, I had actually come across a it wasn't necessarily like a movie, it was sort of like a web series that did exactly that, and it was for the book The Fall of Reach, which is a book adaptation of the Halo game series.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And I read the book, The Fall of Reach, and I remember enjoying. It was like one of the first like sci-fi novels that I read, and the only reason I read it was because it was based on Halo, which is the game that I was absolutely obsessed with in high school. and I remember I think it was actually from the creators or the studio Bungie at the time, who it was either Bungie or 343, but they started to make like a project, or it could have been a fan project. I can't remember. I have to look it up later. But the first like 10 minutes of it, as I was watching it, it made me call back to like the first opening pages of the book, where they do this perfect replication of like the story, where it goes like line for line almost of like the first pages of the book. And as I'm watching it, I couldn't help but to feel like okay, this is like they're doing everything exactly to the book. The story's like the exact same, but for some reason I'm just not enjoying it. They're doing everything right, but it almost feels like that they're so focused on trying to recreate like exactly what was from the book, that it almost becomes distracting, kind of, at least to someone who read the book and who's watching the adaptation. It was like well, okay, this is all the same. I've heard it before, and okay, I feel like I'm supposed to like it, but I just don't. It was.
I remember watching one of the Halo movies.
Yeah, they were all right.
Yeah, they remind me of the cheesy like sci-fi channel movies.
Yeah, and
Yep.
I could go on to hours about people who try to make film adaptations of the Bible. Like
that is a deep, dark rabbit hole.
Like Passion of the Christ.
Yeah.
Boy, yeah.
You want to talk about a book that the authors knew exactly what they were doing. You'll get all kinds of institutions chasing after you to say exactly what they want to say.
Right. What about you? What about for like manga? Has there ever been a manga that? Has there ever been a what?
Did we get to tell pal about movie adaptations and?
I was going to ask you like about. Hold on, I'll be right back.
Yeah.
Because I have a lot to. Well, I don't have a lot. I have like. I want to.
You have strong opinions.
Yeah, but you'll see where I'm going with it. It's not all bad. It's not all bad.
I mean,
I know I complain a lot.
opinion, and it's not necessarily a negative.
Okay, I'm back. But I was going to ask you, like, what your thoughts are for, like, manga or comic book adaptations. Like, if
Oh,
there's
okay.
ever been a
I
comic
thought
book
you were
or
going.
if there's ever been an anime that was a book or a manga first.
Show.
Um,
Right.
Of course,
so
you'd say that one.
yeah,
Well, because it's good. It is a good adaptation.
yeah. The funny thing about that was when you were first talking about this like podcast and we were gonna go through it. I actually went out to get a JoJo, Bizarre's Adventure,
I
and
love JoJo.
I adore it. I love it to death. I watched the whole anime through, and I mean I could go on to hours about that series, but
Yeah, I'm only on Golden Wind.
oh gold nice, very nice. But so so I went ahead and I started reading the manga, and I like it. I really enjoy it because I really I think how the anime played out for what was it? Forget the name of it. Why is my mind on such a blank? I actually have the book right here. It was yeah, Phantom. Yeah, it was like Phantom Blood.
Yeah.
Was that what the anime was called too?
Yeah.
Or was it called? Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, it
the
was Phantom Blood.
very first arc.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think if there was any differences as far as like how certain characters were revealed, but I think the anime is pretty tight to what the what's presented in the manga so far from the first collection. But
Yeah, I
I'd
think
like
with
to see. But go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think with most like manga, the anime adaptations normally stay pretty close to it. I think it's more when you get to the live action movies that it is not it at all.
Oh boy.
Yeah,
But
like the thing with like comics, because I mean the storyboard is right there. All the all the scenes. I mean comics are just pretty much storyboards that are drawn out a lot more better, and all the people have to do with anime is just look at the scenes and make a few changes here and there, but they pretty much have the whole story right there.
Yeah, like that's my thing about Chobits is that sorry to be on about that again, but like because I actually watched the anime first and then went back and read the manga, but if I remember correctly, it was a manga first, and there were only like there's only one significant scene I can remember that was left out of the anime, and I think there was another minor one. But other than that, like they were pretty much the same thing, except the anime actually made the very ending a little bit clearer because they made some changes to the dialogue. But so overall, like that is probably one of the best adaptations I've ever seen in terms of how loyal it's made to the source material.
Yeah, I still yet to watch that anime. It's on my
Do
list.
it!
I,
Do it!
I have
But,
yet to watch it beyond episode 3.
yeah, I read it. I haven't seen it, but I read it, and that's gonna
Yeah,
be
I
enough
forced
now
me to
because
read it.
I'm trying to watch One Piece.
Oh,
So yeah,
I
everything
remember
is
you're gonna be
yeah.
busy for the next year.
Yeah.
I
But
always just thought of Brock being the announcer every time I would see the intro.
yeah. Yeah, but so going back to if you guys are done with the manga adaptations.
Yeah.
So here's my take on film adaptations. Okay. So some are very good, some aren't good, and some are different. So I'm going to use one of my favorite books, and probably my favorite film adaptation
from Holes. Have you guys read Holes?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
I completely forgot about
The
that.
movie,
long time.
the movie is nearly identical to the book. The only like big difference was at the book. In the book, Stanley was overweight when he went to the camp, and he became thin at the end of the book because, he was digging holes. And they didn't do that in the movie because they didn't want the actor to put on weight and then have to quickly lose it. So that was the biggest difference between the book and the movie. But besides that, everything is nearly identical. And I love that movie so much because they don't leave anything out.
Yeah, I remember the book. I remember like the chapters were just teeny, like they were only like a couple pages long.
Yeah, but it had 50 chapters.
Yeah.
But so that's my favorite film adaptation. Now I'm going to go to probably one of my least favorites. So I was really into The Maze Runner.
Oh yeah.
And
I remember that.
I read the first 3 books and I got really excited for the movies. The first one I saw and it was okay, it's not exactly like it, but I was like, it's pretty good. And then the second one was made. And it was not similar at all. Nope. I didn't even watch the third movie because I didn't know what they were going to do because they couldn't do what they did in the third book.
I haven't seen the second one yet.
The second one ruined the whole series for me. Like I could not read anything else after that because it was so weird, and I don't know how they came up with that storyline because it was nothing like the book at all. And so that one really made me upset. But then there are some movies that are adaptations that don't follow the book but also aren't bad. And before I go into that, I know earlier I mentioned Follow the House of Usher. The movie is awful. Like, I don't know how they came up with the movie plot. Really bad. If you read Follow the House of Usher, don't watch the movie. You'll thank me.
Got it.
But so 2 movies I really like are The Shining and Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. The first one with Gene Wilder, which both of them, the authors hated the movies because, especially like The Shining, it kind of follows the many big differences. But those are movies that I think are very well made and well done, even if they don't follow the book. So I think it really just depends on how a movie is made, even if it doesn't follow the book 100%,
Yeah, I remember my mom read like The Shining all the way through when she was like in high school. And when she saw the movie, she said she didn't like it at all. Like she thought the book was way better.
Yeah, I mean the
Which
book is
I thought was
great.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't they come out with like a TV series for The Shining that was supposed to be way more accurate to the book, or do I have that information wrong?
Yes, and it was kind of bad.
I haven't seen it, so I'll
that's
take
also
your
what
word.
I thought I heard people say about it.
Yeah, it looks sillier.
Right.
Like I'm also because Watchmen was a comic first. I've heard people say that the movie for it is bad, but I've never read or watched it, so I wouldn't know.
Which one? There's the original, and then there's the 2 remakes. Yeah, there's the original in the 1980s, I think I want to say. I can't remember, and then there's the 2 new ones.
Yeah. Whichever one is the most accurate to the comic.
The comic.
Wait, which
no, I mean like which movie is the most accurate to? I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know anything about Watchmen. I just know what I've heard other people say about it.
Well, it depends. I haven't watched the comic or read the comic yet, but the movie I thought was really good. It was really fun. It wasn't like super AAA blockbuster superhero movie, but it was different. It was different. It was a cool take on it. And I am excited to watch the series that they have.
gives blue balls a whole new meaning in that movie.
Yeah. To say the least. We'll not go into detail about that.
Sorry.
Okay then.
Let's keep these two innocent minds as innocent as possible.
I mean, my mind's probably not as innocent as you think, but still.
I was about to say, I'm flattered you think that I'm. Remember, I went to public school for high school.
Didn't we all?
I'm
Am I wrong?
One
saying.
that was prone to having fights all the time.
Yeah, and like you also have to remember, my social media poison of choice has been DeviantArt, and DeviantArt has a reputation among some people as being, well, let's be generous and say not a very innocent website.
Yeah, some of their pictures are funny. Some of the art.
That's putting it gently.
Is that all we have for the adaptations?
Yeah, I just wanted to get my thoughts on those few books and movies. But seriously, if you haven't seen and read Holes, you should. If you want to have your faith in film adaptations restored.
Right. I guess that brings us to our last two categories. The next one is, are we currently working on any writing projects, and if so, what are they? For me, of course, I am currently writing a sci-fi thriller, and I haven't decided on title yet, but I am leaning towards one. But it will be the first of an entire series I'm planning on. The first book is as follows, if I can find the synopsis, which I do have right here. The name I'm leaning towards is The Red Stained Ice. When five strangers wake up in a building of an abandoned colony base, they search for answers as to why they're there or what's going on, only to realize they've somehow ended up on a different planet than Earth, a hostile alien ice planet similar to Earth's terrain. Exploring the base, hoping to find something helpful, they stumble across a wild goose chase that will lead them across the frozen planet. The journey leads them along the trails of a group of military-trained scientists. Their trek will make them come face to face with the aggressive creatures. From the moment they wake up to the end of their first adventure, they'll learn what it truly means to survive. Will they even have a home? Hold on. My cat came in the door. I had to close it. And come face to face with the aggressive creatures. From the moment they wake up to the end of their first journey, they'll learn what it truly means to survive. Will they even have a home to go back to? Were they there as prisoners? Perhaps our characters are far ahead of their time and everything they knew was gone. There's only one way to find out, opening the cover and let the story take hold, trapping your mind. That's basically what I've... Yeah, it's a pretty crazy idea, but that's the book I'm working on right now. Soon to be a little bit changed up with some new interesting ideas that I recently received. But not too much changed. And I've only got 13 chapters planned so far. What about you, Mystic? Are you working on anything?
Oh, I don't really have anything terribly exciting in the way of writing projects going on right now. I've been working on a dissection of a video game I've been playing called Selfie Collection, which I'm sure nobody here wants to hear anything about, especially if you've already heard me talk about it.
You know what? When you describe the plot of the game, I've become highly interested in the story behind.
Yeah, the
this
plot goes some
the
places
rest of
you
the
would
game.
not expect.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you'd actually enjoy the gameplay enough for me to say, oh yeah, check it out. Like, you have to be into clothes and dressing characters up and making cute outfits. Like, you have to really be into that because that is the bulk of the game. But
Like I play this game for the plot.
yeah. So I've been working on that. I was before Inktober started, I was working on a story between a vampire and an asexual character. But that kind of went on hiatus for Inktober. It kind of went on hiatus before that because I was struggling with some plot things. That's always my struggle, is like I always want to write like a cute romantic story, but then I have no plot for where it's actually going other than characters not together, characters meet, characters end up together. And that's kind of it. And then there was Inktober, which was I wrote the little mini magnet poems like once a day, every day in October, but that's over now for this year. So that's kind of all I've got going on in the writing realm right now. So like I said, nothing too terribly exciting. Because I can't think of plots.
Plots are hard to write unless you could find some kind of conflict to throw into it and have them try to solve it.
Like, I think I'd be pretty good as a ghostwriter because I think I can help develop plots. I'm just not good at coming up with them.
Right, that makes sense. Kai, what about you? Do you have any writing projects?
I've had like this story that's just been kind of bubbling in the back of my mind for so many years, and I've tried to put it down on paper, and I guess I'm in that development hell type of situation where I'm just trying to write it out to an extent where it just like makes sense, and because it's like I have like all the themes and I have all the conflict there, but how do I develop these characters, and how I like translate it to imposing these themes and conflicts onto them, and how they react to it, like how to make it look as like kind of natural and organic as I can to like make it relatable. That's kind of what I'm stuck with. I don't know if that's a problem that people have, or if that's just me. Like I don't know. It's like kind of on the lines of like I don't know if you get kind of like a Black Mirror style like situation,
Right.
and yeah, that's that's what I got in the back of my mind. Just plus I got work and I'm trying to go to school.
Right, yeah.
But hopefully, I'll be taking like a college writing course, and
If I ever go to college, I would definitely take a writing course.
yeah, hopefully it'll give me some perspective on techniques to use, like if I'll even use them, or if I could. Oh, I'll probably use them.
What about you, Alpal? Any writing projects?
I wish. I really do wish, because I used to write a lot and I just haven't really been able to nowadays. I've been really busy this year with school, but I'm hoping maybe I'll be able to start developing something soon, because I really missed it a lot. It's been a hell of a semester. So
Yeah,
I
that's
barely had
definitely
time to
for
do
sure.
anything. Hopefully have an idea and develop something soon. But at the moment, I don't have anything.
All right, well, that brings us to our last category. How has reading affected our lives today? For me, it has really opened my eyes to a very peaceful and calming, exciting way to pass time. It has inspired me to take on my own writing endeavors and find a joyous and friendly community that's also really supportive and helpful when it comes to asking for advice. They're full of surprisingly friendly people, and it's just a really fun thing to get into. Reading for me is like watching a movie. Whenever I read a book, I just play it out in my head, create the movie, give the character voices, and that's really fun for me because I'm just so creative. I've always been that way. Doesn't matter if it's like a comic book, a manga, regular book, children's book. I just love playing it out in my head. Sometimes as a kid I would even act out the scenes, or I guess as a kid it's called playing pretend. But it's really been a big part of my life. What about for you, Mystic? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, like that really goes for me. Like I kind of started off this whole thing. Reading was just kind of always a thing for me, and books were kind of it's so cliche, so cheesy to say, but books were really there for me when no one else was. And they've also been like my way to explore the world and like go on all these crazy adventures without ever having to actually leave home and, put myself in grave danger in some situations. And like they've taught me a lot about, I realize that fiction is not the same as reality, and so you can't take everything in a book as like good life advice. But even acknowledging that, I feel like they have taught me a lot about like life and love and how to interact with people from all over, from like all different life experiences and backgrounds and things like that. And it just, I would be nowhere today if it wasn't for books and literature, like R.L. Stein and Goosebumps, because those were, that and Sahara Special, like I said, were some of the earliest things I was reading. And without those, I probably never would have had an interest in writing, and I probably things. So yeah, like reading has just been really important to me, and it's kind of ingrained into who I am now. And I honestly don't know what I'd do without it. I wish more people would do it, because some of the things I see on the internet prove that people either don't read or they don't care. Or
Sure.
both.
Probably both.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, what about for you, Kai? How has it affected you? How has it been for your life growing up?
See, I would say it's kind of a gift and a curse at the same time, where, because as I mentioned, I grew up in like kind of a strong like Christian house where it's just like I'll read the Bible,
Right.
and it's made me like, I grew up like painfully aware of um sort of just just literature in general. Where I came from, uh a lot of the publications that I would get through my family, they were through a fairly old publishing company that is very infamous for creating literature, specifically studying the Bible and interpreting the meanings behind uh, the various books of the Bible, from the Old Testament to the New. And so there was always this sense of like, yeah, this organization that you're in, it's like, you're on the end and you're on the good side, and everything that we're teaching you is what this book means. and and so everything that I took, it was just like, well, okay, this is what I know, and this is what I'm told to preach about to everybody else around me. And I took it in stride, like, as a kid. And it was, and the one thing that they were stressed about was that, you only read these publications, but don't read any other publications or any theology or any other religion at all. Stick with this, because if you go off and go reading this, it's like you'll be, reading stuff that Satan the devil wants you to be reading, and God doesn't like that very much. And so I'd be like, okay. And yeah, it's just after a while, as I got older, um, when I have this sense of, I just have to stick with this, like, I just have to stick with this literature. I have to do exactly what these men are telling me to do. And it gets to a point where life just starts to become a drag, because you're reading stuff about, like, what's going to happen in the future, like, and it's like, yeah, you're going to be there, but everyone else is not, because they're not reading what you're reading. And it just creates this atmosphere of what do you call it, like, it's just this superiority complex. And the way that I got out of it was by sort of, um I guess, reading, like, sort of like between the lines of, like, certain literature that, like, especially like in school, and just seeing, like, certain stories that would come up, and I would, like, kind of just compare it with what I was reading at the time. And eventually after school, I just started just reading all this other different, like, religious stuff, like, stuff that I'm not supposed to read, like. And I start to see that all of it is pretty much the same, pretty much. And
What was that like, reading different religions and stuff? What was it like during your first experience reading that type of stuff?
it was a sense of familiarity. It was like reading a story that I had heard before. Um, or I think it wasn't until I saw, like, people like Jordan Peterson. Um, he he did he did a take on the Garden of Eden story. And I heard the interpretation that he gave of it. Um, and for me, it was just another point of perspective that somebody else had of a story that I grew up with, and I listened to, like, my whole life, as far as the interpretation that I hold. Um because from what I was told about, the reason why the world's in a mess is somebody screwed up, and not only did God make him suffer for it, but he made all of his children suffer for it. And and so the only way that they would be saved was, like, through the means of Jesus Christ, like, his son. And it's just this whole cosmic conspiracy of, like, yeah, man was put on the earth 6,000 years ago, and we're all suffering because of the actions of one man. And even that line alone, suffering from one person's action, is a very common theme that you see a lot in literature. and it's not necessarily with like the Garden of Eden or anything, but it's a very sentimental thing that people are familiar with, from a lot of aspects in life. And but uh but I think what Peterson was getting at the story was it was a story about when people became more conscious of themselves, and when they took from the fruit of the tree of knowledge that they were told not to eat from, but there was a serpent from the garden that said that you would become like God, knowing both uh, good and evil. And so it was when Eve took the fruit, she, I guess, woke up and gave it to Adam, and he too just woke up, and they became aware of their surroundings, and they became aware of themselves. And the first thing that they noticed that was that they were naked, and the first thing that they did to the bushes to cover themselves up. And so when God asks about them, he said, why do you cover yourselves in these coverings? And they said that they realized that they were naked. And God told them, well, who told you you were naked in the first place? And it was an instance of, and so they were punished for learning things that they weren't supposed to learn. And as a result, not only did they suffer, but all their kids suffered for it as well. And it's I feel like the point that it was trying to come across, like in that story, to me personally, was that the more people like take in information, because human beings are are complex organisms already. We just have so much information that goes in, and especially with literature, just you were able to read things that were originally given like orally, uh, that were just originally spoken. And it seems that the more that people read, the more information they take in, it becomes it, it could get them into a mess, sort of, especially if some of the stuff that they take it in so seriously, if like the organization that I came from,
Right.
like. And I think that's all that was trying that it was that story was trying to relay, was that when we overcomplicate ourselves and become so self-aware of our surroundings, that life just becomes this unbearable mess that we just end up like suffering in. And I feel like that's just kind of what uh, literature has done done to me, like in a sense, where it's yeah, I grew up in all these, grown up learning all these like things about like this religion, and now I just want to forget. But that's kind of my hot take. That was my can of worms.
Right. What about for you, El Pal? How has reading affected your life?
I think it really has just shaped me who I am today. Kind of like going along with Mystic, they really do kind of teach you things that sometimes it's hard to learn throughout life. I also think it really helps with my creativity. So I feel like when you when you read, you're kind of course, like you do have some sort of imagination that can go along with it, because it's not like when you're watching a movie and everything's kind of set, or at least when I read, the scenes kind of play out in my head, and it's like you can share the experience and share the connection that the writer has, and share the connection with the characters. I think it's just really helped my creativity and helps me see the world in another way. And I really wish more people did read, especially like nowadays. A lot of people just don't, and it kind of breaks my heart because there's just so much you can learn and so many places you can go just by
I think a lot of people could use reading during the stuff we're facing this year. I think people could definitely benefit from reading.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
take a load off from reality and just like let yourself get lost in a really good book. You will feel so much better.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of why I started reading JoJo, because just take a breath and just get lost. But I think, I mean, it's definitely good to read. Like I don't want to like downplay like literature at all. I mean, I think I think it is really important for people to be educated, and it's just sometimes there's just a lot of stuff that people learn about that's just very scary, and a lot of people, they make the excuse of like, oh, just don't don't read that, just be stay simple, like just keep doing what the organization says, keep going to church and read their publications and just ignore what the world says. I mean, it's a very damning experience for a human being to be put through that, and to be aware of what they're in. So it's just kind of like just finding this middle way of educating yourself while at the same time just, it's kind of like breathing. Take it in, you breathe in, you breathe out. People, they just study and study and study and study. They're just breathing in and in and in, and they're holding their breath, and there just comes a point where you just have to just let it go, just breathe out, because when you breathe out, eventually it'll come back to you. It's That's just the way education just should be, where you take stuff seriously for a while, but then you get the comedic relief, just breathe out. you know
Like that's why comedic relief characters exist, is because even if a story is supposed to be serious, you have to kind of counterbalance that with some brevity, because none of us, even the most pessimistic among us, wants to just focus on everything that's wrong and terrible with the world and so bad all the time, because it's just too much. The weight of the world is not something one person can bear.
yeah yeah
And I think that's also kind of maybe the point you were trying to get at, is that like knowledge is both a blessing and a curse, because there are some things I'd rather not know, but once you know them, you can't unlearn them. And then there are other things that you're very happy not knowing, like to use the classical example, lots of people know what's in hot dogs, lots of what's in them.
yeah yeah absolutely. Yeah, and then there's other things, like even in our own biology, like we don't think about food that goes into our body and then comes out the other end. I mean, our body just knows what
It
to
just
do,
does it, yeah.
and it's just we don't know. I mean, at least like when we're born, it's not something that we learn. It's just something that we already do. It's just it's exactly like breathing. I'm, I mean, that's got to be tricky. Like you're completely unconscious, and yet somehow, 1 or 2 years, it's just you just know how to breathe, going from breathing in the fluids of your mom's belly to breathing oxygen and fresh air. Like those are things that people don't teach you. They're just things that you just do. And I think there's just some things that are beneficial to learn, and then there's other things that it's just not so much. You just kind of do it, and you just go with it.
There's actually something like that with cats, where cats have a very set pattern in the way that they clean themselves, but like nobody teaches them how to do that. Like, yes, their moms clean them when they're babies, but they're not like specifically teaching them, okay, first you clean your paw and then you clean your head with, but they don't like teach them how to do that. They just clean them, and then the kittens somehow eventually they just learn how to do that, and they all do it the same way. And if a cat stops mid licking process, they will resume in the same place they left off.
Yeah, I hate when my cat cleans himself in my room. It's just so noisy. He'll just be on my bed, and I'll be fine with it. Then he's in my room, and as soon as I hear him go, I'm like, oh, get out of here! Do that somewhere else.
I've had a lot of cats, and I haven't had a problem with them cleaning themselves being particularly loud.
Yeah, he's just obnoxious when he does it. Just hear him
Well,
from
he's
across
just
the
trying to
room.
be clean for his human.
Right.
Well, he's trying to be clean for himself, but being clean for his human is a side effect.
So, yeah. So I guess that brings us to the end, finally. Unless you guys have anything left to say about books and literature. Last minute details, notes.
There was one more thing I wanted to throw out there. Was we didn't really talk about manga as much as I thought we might. So I just wanted to throw out there that my favorite manga is the Alice in the Country of Hearts series, which also has like Alice in the Country of Clover, Alice in the Country of Joker, things like that. But it's based on a love adventure game from Japan, but it's also based on Alice in Wonderland. And just as a little hook to try and get people interested in it, it features the Mad Hatter as a mafia boss. Need I more?
That is definitely a character I would love to see. That's definitely a version I would love to see Johnny Depp play.
Curly.
Well, I guess if that's it, we can wrap it up.
Yep.
Well, this has definitely been a long one. 3
And
minutes,
it could have been longer.
3 hours and 20 minutes. But this was definitely been a long one, probably the longest one we've had. But we are finally at the end, guys. Thank you so much for joining me today. I had so much fun with this one. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It was
Yeah, that's
great to
fun.
be on here.
It's a good time.
Well, that does it for today's video. If you enjoyed, leave a big thumbs up. If you want more, don't forget to subscribe and smash that bell to be notified when I go live or upload. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you all later.